Education to order at 6:04. Roll call of directors.
Dubinsky.
Here.
Gorman.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Hermaning.
Here.
Kaiser.
Here.
Maple.
Here.
Stankowski.
Here.
Colangelo.
Here.
Kelly Zebro.
Here.
Dustin Brooks.
Pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll seek approval of the agenda.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda. I'll second.
Motion by Kelly Zebro, second by Diane Gorman. Any corrections, updates, changes? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5, approval of the minutes from the regular board meeting November 19, 2024. Seek a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll second it.
Motion by Donna Kaiser, second by Kelly Zebro. Any corrections? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Abstain?
Yes, thank you. Special presentations, item number 6, discussion and possible decision approval of the Mosinee PTO donation.
PTO is going to be here tonight, but we just wanted to recognize their donation from their fund. Oh, we are here. Okay, I'll turn it over.
Hi, I'm Tracy with the PTO fundraising chair, and we are presenting our annual donation to the school district to be split evenly between the 3 schools.
Okay.
Thank you very much for all your hard work. We appreciate all the work they do and helping us out and all the work they do throughout the year. So thank you. So we need a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve.
No second.
Motion by Diane Gorman, second by Jessica Maple. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 6B, discussion and possible decision approval of the Mosinee Youth Football donation for a new scoreboard.
Yeah, Tom and I met with a couple representatives of Mosinee Youth Football about a month ago, and they would like to make a donation that includes all aspects related to a new scoreboard at the football field, and the relocation of it. That includes the board, the installation, and the demolition of the old one, and all the electrical hookups and everything. And then they're going to take the current one or the old one, and they're going to move it out here behind to put on their field out back here. And they're doing a lot of work out there. In case you didn't know, they are in the process of finalizing they got 3 train carts, I don't know what you want to call them, cans, I think they're called, cans, containers that they're going to use to kind of build a press box type thing with and do some other work with. So they're in the process of getting some work done with that, but they're going to donate the scoreboard at the current school, at our current field, and they'll take the old one. And their donation includes everything from beginning to end.
Awesome.
That's great.
I'll accept that.
Moving to motion to accept.
I'll accept that.
All right, motion by Peter Hansen, second, was that you, Kelly?
Yes.
Kelly Zebro. Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 6C, discussion, a presentation by Mr. Jamrose of Blue Design Group.
Yeah, I'll turn it over to Steve. So welcome. This is obviously, you probably know him better than I do. You've known him longer than I have, but Steve is the architect and engineer on our building project, so he's going to take us through some preliminary schematic type designs and kind of give us an update on where we are in the design process and next steps as we go forward. And then Kevin's going to follow him and talk about the money part of it.
Awesome, thank you, and congratulations. I mean, I can't remember the last time a referendum passed in this town, so that's good work by everybody that was involved in that process. I know you've been working on it a long time. Just an update today on where we're at since the election in November. What we have today is kind of a draft form of the schematic design. So before we get into the next phase of our design, which is design development, which then leads to construction of bid documents, we have what's called schematic design. That's where we try to get the footprint nailed down. We try to get the dimensions. We try to get the shuffling of the spaces. So we've reached out to Tom a couple times to make sure our arrangement of the spaces was good. What do you want in those spaces? And so we've had some dialogue back and forth with regards to all of the spaces that you'll see in here. So that process has been going pretty well. Greg, I know you and Tom and a couple others met with the tech ed component of this. You want to just give us kind of a rundown of what that was all about?
Yeah, I reached out to a company called Lab Midwest. That's out of the Milwaukee area that specializes in designing and one-stop shop for CTE type equipment. They'll help you with kind of what the layout should look like, possibly based on your needs and wants, and then they would turn around and sell you the equipment, obviously, and then their equipment comes with curriculum and professional development, so it comes with everything. They specialize in the K-12 market, but also they dabble in, they also work in the post-secondary market. They do a lot of work with NTC. I got to know Matt Kirchner, the owner of it, through a previous relationship, so we reached out to them, had an initial meeting last week or the week before. They came up on Monday and met with some of us and talked kind of through what our wishes might be, and then they're going to go back. Mike, their head of the K-12 part of it, is going to go back and do some work on it and get us something by the end of the week to take a look at over break, kind of a project. And Mike is actually from Wausau originally, so he's familiar with the area. They work a lot with some of the major industries in our region. They know Matt serves on boards with some of the individuals from Green Heck, and so they know a lot of the people in our area. Crystal finishing, people like that. They've worked with those individuals in the past, so they know a lot of those. So they're going to be a good resource for us.
Yeah, most definitely. Those guys definitely know their stuff, and they've worked with tons of school districts. I think 8 states in the Midwest are
Yep.
kind of their target area, so
Yep.
they have their finger on the pulse of what's going on. What I'll go through today is just kind of a schematic design of where we're at with the site, with the floor plan, with kind of the main exterior elevation, just the concept of what we're trying to achieve, and then some sections through it. So on the site plan, number 1, the bullet points I'll go through. Building addition provides a new receiving isolated from the student and public. Currently in that courtyard area is where most of the goods are received for this school. So you have semi-trucks and larger vehicles during the day. I wouldn't say garbage trucks are a problem because that's usually before hours, 5, 6 in the morning, and then after hours, but we're taking that all over to Pine Street. Number 2, the building addition provides a new electrical service. Steve's had some conversations with public service. You want to just kind of give us a little feedback on that?
Sure. Well, we have a main transformer that feeds the entire high school. And during our Nexus project, we upgraded our main service panel, which is going to serve us very well with this new addition. So a lot of costs we can negate. But that being said, the regulations of clearances and such with the existing transformer will not pass. So we have to relocate that in some form. We also have power poles that are right in our way, and that it's not shown on this drawing, but they're really not where we need to be. So we're looking at having a new pole installed on Pine Street, and probably the transformer could be related over there on Pine, and our goal is to get everything underground if possible to the new service. But that is really in public services hands, and they kind of tell you what your options are. So we're working through that, and I'll bring that forward. It's a lot of cost, so we're trying to find out the best way to handle that, because that's 3,000 amps, so that's nothing you want to play around with. But they've been very good with us in the past, so that's what we're shooting for.
Certainly a big part of this project. Number 3, building addition provides covered entrances at the main entries and exits. This building does have a main entrance to the left, number 11, but there's also entrances on the back or bottom right-hand corner. When you exit out of the gym, there's that main entrance, and then there's another entrance in between the vehicles from Tech Ed that goes to the east. 4, the building addition provides a new woods lab adjacent to the building exterior house build in lab space for Tech Ed. So as a part of this, we'll see in the floor plan, we're going to divvy up the woods. That's going to become a metal space to double up their space, but woods is going to be closer to where their outdoor house build is, which has been something that's been missing for a while. The guys in woods class have to walk all the way across the parking lot. It's hard to monitor the kids when they're on the roof and so forth. Here, it'll be basically just a stone's throw away. 5, delivery access provided to the new woods lab and Tech Ed lab on both sides. So if you see those 2 vehicles shown for identification purposes on the east and then on the north, those are 2 areas where we can supply materials to those fab labs or the woods area. 6, the master plan provides for stormwater snow storage area, northwest portion of the existing parking lot. We think that's gonna be the area we're targeting right now, but it's hard to believe that you have to consume so much of your parking lot for stuff like that, but snow storage, stormwater management, that's something that we have to deal with for sure. Number 7, the building addition provides a master plan for a future 2-station gymnasium and athletic storage. So we know that it was not part of this referendum, but somewhere down the line, we probably are gonna need another gymnasium, so it would behoove us not to plan for that now. And we're also taking into consideration that existing maintenance garage that you see in gray, we've positioned the building in such a way that the right half of that building has all the overhead doors, so vehicles come in on the right side. So we've adjusted our footprint so that their vehicles still can come into that gray area, that maintenance garage. And the other part of it on the left is just solid wall, there's no opening. So we've had to kind of plan around all of that. Number 8, the master plan renovates the existing parking lot to provide for parking and one-way parent drop-off near the main entrance. So the thought is, as you drop your kids in, it's a one-way in, one-way out, exiting onto Pine Street, which is kind of a little used road right now. The kids park on that road. But once you go through the parking lot, you can either go right, go left, and we're gonna work with the city to try and make sure that there's no issues with that. Number 9, the master plan renovates the existing parking lot in the courtyard for parking. Number 10, master plan reassigns the bus pickup and drop off to High Street. Currently, all the buses, as you may be aware of, are in that main parking lot. And the parking is hard to be it's hard to be efficient with how you lay parking out there, because when you've got 30 or 25 buses to plan for, that always has to be left open. You really can't maximize the parking back there. The parking that we have now is maximized to the point where I think we end up with just a few stalls. I think
We have 95, well, 97 we're done, so we're actually gonna
So-
change to.
you might look at that and say, well, that parking lot is smaller, but we still get more parking spots in it by taking the buses out of that area and putting them along High Street. 11, a precast M logo entry planter wall canopy provides a buffer from the northwest winds at the main entrance. This is obviously in the northwest corner of the site where you're going to get some northwest winds, but we recently completed a school for the Bonduelle School District, and they had a real tricky entrance as well. We used 3 pieces of precast for a front wall, decorative wall, and it worked really well. In this case, we're proposing the logo M, and when you cast those precast panels, they're about 8 feet or 12 feet wide. But if you think of the M logo that we have, you're going to pay for the mold for half of that M, and it just flips over, so it's a perfect template. So it's cost effective to cast it in 2 pieces, and it gives you a pretty big image when you come into the school. Number 12, the master plan provides for a future outdoor plaza to be developed adjacent to the commons. So that 12 that is there is right outside of the commons that we're creating, and it could be a future plaza space. Eventually, if a gym is added to the north and on the west side of the purple that's up there, we'll have to take a look and see if that becomes outdoor space or indoor space. But at this point, it's kind of a holding spot for that. Any questions on the site plan? Next one is the floor plan, and I've broken this up to fit on the sheet in 2 areas. All of the purple is the new square footage. The orange that you see is areas that are going to be remodeled. The yellow is redesignating that space. It is an existing space now. We're not going to change it. We're just going to put new people in there. And then in the metals on the bottom right, you can see there will be some remodeling, but just not as heavy as the orange areas. So with this, number 1, the existing wood lab is converted to additional metal lab, as we had talked about, with perhaps an opening in between. We haven't gone through whether that's going to be an overhead door or whether it's going to be a single door or a double door, but the idea is that that space is just going to be turned over. Number 2, the existing high school office is converted to the district office space, so that area that you see in cream right there is just going to be turned over to district offices. Number 3, the existing kitchen is remodeled to provide a board meeting room and additional classroom. There's also space there, and Tom, this will maybe be a discussion for you whether or not you want to look at changing that to a staff room. Right now, I think the staff room is in a tiny room way on the other side of the building, so I think if we turn that into a staff room, it's near where we've got water and so forth, and it's pretty centrally located. That might be an option for that space. 4, the existing cafeteria is remodeled to provide space for a new fitness room for students in the community. I think Steve's already talked at length about the flooring that was repurposed in there, and we'll be able to reuse that for the new use. 5, the existing band and adjacent practice room is remodeled to address accessibility, acoustics, and programming space needs. There are some old wood risers in there we're gonna have to dig into and see if we can take those out without messing with the structure. We think they're all framed out of wood, but the idea is to make that room a little bit more accessible. Right now, there's no accessibility with those risers. 6, the existing freezer space is removed and remodeled to provide space for a new training room that was displaced by the band space remodeling. 7, the existing girls' locker room is remodeled to provide space for a classroom and athletic storage. I know there's a pretty big need for athletic storage. I don't think the helmets and stuff were stored too good back in our day, Paul, with Bob McCoy. He was pretty frustrated with the storage space, so hopefully he would love what he's getting now for his storage. 8, the existing boys' locker room is remodeled to provide restrooms, egress corridor to and from the gymnasium, a referee room, and classroom space. So if you look at that top orange, that middle orange space, we're really accomplishing a lot of things by taking that locker room out of there. We have to get an egress out of the gym that gets us no more than 200 feet in an unsprinkled building to an exit. So I've got to cut an exit through that locker room and then take up a little bit of that egg space to get people out into that courtyard. The other 3 exits will exit as they do now, but we create a corridor where that district office and old cafeteria is to get people out from an exiting standpoint on that side as well. In the process, we're creating new restrooms. When you have an assembly space that has X amount of people, you've got to put a family restroom in there too. So there's a family restroom that has a diaper changing station in it, a big janitor's closet in there, and then the men's and women's. We don't have any space really dedicated to referees. That's in there now. And then that little classroom, when I was talking with some of the staff here, I asked Tom if that might not be a bad space for Jeff Heisey and his special needs classroom, which currently has a coffee bar in the existing cafeteria. And we thought we would use that concession space, which is right in the corner in the new construction area, as another spot for him and his kids. They can literally go through the door right up to that space and sell coffee from the concession stand in the morning, and it's right in that main thoroughfare, if you will, the main street that we'll talk about. Plan provides a new concession space, number 9. Number 10, building addition provides new FIAD and team locker rooms. I know we spoke with Tom and tried to work out a number. Tom, are you pretty happy with the number of team and FIAD lockers that you have in there,
Yeah,
in terms of what you need?
yeah, when we look at team lockers, we're right above anywhere we would need for any of our home teams. And we got more of the FIAD and bigger of the FIAD than we thought we would. And it's gonna match and be far more accommodating to student use.
Yeah, I think the lockers that we targeted for FIAD are about 15 by 15 by 18. And then the other lockers are 15 by 30, 18 inches deep. So good sized lockers. I know when my kids went to Nina, they had 12 by 12 lockers and put a backpack in there, which was about 80 pounds on their back. You can't even fit them in there, so the kids never use the lockers. So I think with a 15 by 15 locker, you guys will be money to the good on that and hopefully be in good shape. Number 11, building provides a new cafeteria that provides seating for 440 occupants. Currently, you have tables for about 310. So in this area, the 3 tables on the left that are lightly dashed in are the 3 new tables you could buy. Otherwise, the rest of the tables that you have fill the rest of that main street. And then there's additional seating around the perimeter, whether it's benches, whether it's dining tables to the north side of the locker room that give you a variety of different ways or areas that the kids can eat. When we did a new commons for Hortonville, We had stand-up tables, or we had like a deli style, kind of a countertop that they could sit at, and they rewarded a lot of the kids that were gifted students or good students. During the day, they could come out there, and a lot of times during the day, the kids are milling around throughout that commons area at the Hortonville High School. Number 12, building addition provides a new high school office, accessed by a new secure vestibule. So when you come in that vestibule, there will be 2 windows for 2 secretaries in that office to let you in. If they get buzzed in, they come through that door, and then they circulate through to the other side, or they can be buzzed through to the rest of the school. But either way, there's a locked vestibule with security and so forth where they have to be vetted out. Number 12, building addition provides a new kitchen located adjacent to the receiving area. So where that kitchen is, and you guys probably wouldn't know this, but there's quite a steep grade. When I say steep, you have probably 32 inches of grade change from elevation 1154, which is our main floor coming out of door number 7, to where the existing maintenance building is. So initially we were thinking, let's fill that all to level 1154 at the tune of probably about $1 million. Right now, we're trying to look at this and say, how can we save money and split this building into different levels? So if you come out of that main street, down that corridor to the tech ed space and take a right, the idea is that the cafeteria would be up at that same elevation, but we start to transition the 2 tech ed spaces and the receiving area 2 feet or 2 feet 8 down until our civil guy tells us what the ideal scenario is that allow us to use less grade or bring less fill in, work with the site a little bit better, and in essence create that ramp along that corridor that needs to be 1 in 12. So if we drop 24 feet or 2 feet down, we have to have a 24-foot long ramp. If it's 30 inches, we have to have a 30-foot long ramp. So we're kind of working through that process in schematic design to try and save some money on our site costs.
Listen to what those civil engineers say. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, civil engineers for the win, right?
That's right.
Number 14, building addition provides clear story natural daylighting in the center of the building addition. When I was looking at this originally, Steve and I went back and forth, and Steve said, you gotta get that commons up in front of the building. And when I looked at it, I was just like, every commons that we've ever designed for high schools wants to have the ability to enter into a gym. So if you go into that commons, whether it's Gacona, Was East, you name it, DC Evers, when you walk in that commons, you either go to the gym, you go to the auditorium. When I designed Wapaka's new high school, if any of you have ever been in Wapaka's high school, when you walk into that commons, you have the auditorium in front of you, you have the gym on the left, you have their main street. That's what a commons wants to be. So in this case, because the gym was so far back in the building, we had the cafeteria we had to fit in there, which wanted to be, or the kitchen wanted to be next to receiving. It made sense to take this commons and just stretch it out east to west and make it really long and linear. And what that did in regards is, yeah, it creates a little bit of a street-like feel, but it connects the east side or the back side of Meadows, that sidewalk from the back side to the front, and the front to the back, and it also allows us to elevate that spine a little bit, that circulation spine, to bring some natural daylight in. And when the new gym is created somewhere down the road, this will plug into that gym. It plugs into the kitchen, it plugs into the old gym, and it plugs into the corridor system as well. So it really forced our hand. It was pretty easy to say, okay, well, we got to stretch this commons out. And when I started putting all the tables in there to show how your existing furniture, Steve, fits in there, it actually fits pretty well. So it worked out a little bit better, and it gives you a little bit more square footage, a little bit more seating actually in that commons for future growth. And I'm not lost in all this is the discussion that maybe somewhere down the road, this might be an emergency shelter where we have to seat a lot of people. So having a little bit more in that commons is also helpful. Commons is one of those things that you really can't, when you build it, that's your core facility, you can't expand it. So the idea is that you try to make it as big as you can now, a little bit above what your seating capacity is. And I think when I spoke to the food service people, they said they serve food in the cafeteria in 2 shifts, usually about 150 to 160 people each shift. So knowing we have 300 plus from a seating standpoint, we're in good shape there. Building number 15, building addition provides covered entrance at the main entrances and exits. 16, precast M logo entry planner, we talked about that as a buffer. 17, master plan provides for future outdoor plaza. And then 18, plans for a combination of display cases, planters, and alternate dining seating options in that main area. And the planters, I think it was more an idea of Steve pushing that to keep that space open and get a little green in there so it's not so sterile, so not so institutional. And as we develop that in the next phase of design, we'll start to see what that means, whether it's a trellis system that we've used in other buildings where vines can grow up, whether it's a planter that just has plants in it. We'll kind of vet the right process out from a maintenance standpoint and then go from there. Any questions on the floor plan?
So we're gonna move our trophy case over there then?
Well, the 1983 trophy's gotta go over there for sure. Even though it's second place to Paul Christ, but that's okay.
Not bitter.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of comments or questions. So with the commons area are, so number 12, that's obviously doors. And then is that just to the, which would be, I believe, the west, is that a door or is that a window?
That's a
Yes,
window.
That's a window, okay, so then that tells me everything up on, right near number 17, that's a line of windows, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so do all of those have some type of, if this is going to be a potential emergency shelter, is there a protective coating or anything like that on the windows for safety reasons? Has that been in?
We haven't gotten to that level of detail yet, but.
It's just a point of consideration because you also had mentioned the outdoor future use.
Mhm.
While trellises are much more aesthetically appealing,
Mhm.
a concrete type barrier planter would be much more safety minded to help to stop any vehicles or if any type
Oh,
of.
yeah, bollards and so forth.
Exactly. It
Kind of
helps to stop.
wassatile,
Yes.
stuff
That's a
that
great
stuff that you see at Target and so
Yes.
forth.
It's
Correct.
not as aesthetically appealing, but those would be great for safety.
Yeah, and if that area does get developed, and we're still talking with Steve's maintenance crew in terms of how they want to take care of this building from a snow standpoint, but if those windows along the north face into that courtyard end up needing some protection from a bollard standpoint, that would be where I'd look to is some of the items from Wassatile.
Yes, yes.
Good point.
Have we also, in terms of the new addition, the interior doors, looked at how we're going to have barricade features on those as well? Or
The
not?
connection doors?
Yes, well, and the room door, the classroom door, any of that, yes.
Any
Just a
exterior
point of
door.
consideration.
One of the things that you see up there with all of the door swings is one of the safety features. As part of security in school buildings, if you have doors that swing out like this and bring them back in, what we've been told is that they can chain those doors so you can't get out. And so for that reason, we always put the doors like this, so when they close, you can't chain them together. So unless it's required by code from a clearance standpoint, from ADA, I swing all the doors, all the exit doors in that direction from a security standpoint. So that's one feature. Inside the door, inside the school itself, there's certainly different locking capabilities that each classroom door can have. And we'll give those options to Steve and he'll pass them, take them up the ladder and see which one works for you guys. And that's usually how we address safety from that. I will say in Bonduelle, and this maybe gets more to a superintendent question, Bonduelle had narrow light door or windows in their doors, and on the new school they wanted them all taken off. Because at the end of the day, the teachers just put crepe paper over them anyway, and so you can't see into them, and that window into the door just provides another opportunity for someone to break the window and get in. So.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the window in the narrow window in the door. The one that's always the struggle is the side light.
Yeah.
That's the one that's hard to protect.
And side lights are harder to put in if your school is not sprinkled, because by code, all your corridors have to be 1 hour rated. If it's sprinkled, then you can get away with not having 1 hour rated doors and so forth, and you can get away with side lights. But, you know, some of the new school designs with some of the bigger firms, they try to put all glass. Like when Nina was built, but at about $12 million more than our taxpayer money, they put all glass walls in their tech ed area. So from the tech ed area, or anybody walking through those corridors could just shoot the windows or break the windows, and, you know, they could shoot anybody up. So they've taken a more liberal approach in terms of how they treat some of the classrooms and the interactions. But
I want to throw one thing there too, regarding the doors, and we brought it up.
Yes.
So, to Steve's point, the new structure we're adding on to here, everything in purple will be sprinkled situation. So the walls that go against our existing building to the new, that is a whole perimeter of firewalls. And all the doors have mag filters, it's all, that's a fire rated wall, just like we had to do at the middle school.
or the science wing as well.
Yeah.
Those were
They're all fire
doors.
rated, so.
Okay, and the only other thing I would just wanna add on is, have we had a discussion where we talked to Mosinee PD just to get their eyes on this and any input from a safety perspective as well?
We have not.
And fire, I'm sorry.
We haven't at this point.
Okay,
Yeah.
We're gonna wait till it gets a little further down the process, and then we'll have a conversation maybe with them.
thank you.
So I was thinking with your questions, Megan and Peter and Jessica, and I forgot who else was on the safety committee, but perhaps some of the minutes from those committee meetings might be helpful as far as the safety considerations for some of the design work, some of the exterior, as you were talking about, because that was a big part of the conversations during those committee meetings were, if we ever have the opportunity to pass a referendum, if we have an opportunity to expand our building, how can we incorporate some of those safety provisions into our design work?
Yeah,
So
that'd be awesome.
providing some of that, those minutes perhaps might be of benefit to you.
I know as a part of this, we will have security cameras as a part of it. Whether you guys want to do key fob systems to get in and out, whether it taps into your existing system, we'd look at that as well. But security cameras will be a big part of it as well.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have more. So
You next.
Go ahead. I have about 10 to 15 minutes at most. I've got to leave for my daughter's concert. I'm not going to be here for the discussion on the school calendar. Greg knows I'm vehemently opposed to August 19th, but been around construction for a long time. Looking at these drawings, explain to me why you need 4 or 9 more days.
Why?
For 4 or 9 more days. For
Well, I mean, we're starting August 19th because of construction. 4 or 9 days to me don't save you a whole lot in the construction world, so I'm not gonna be here to vote.
Yeah,
It's probably gonna be 8-0, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm against it.
Yeah.
I've heard nothing positive about it.
okay,
As a parent, I can't stand it.
Yep.
But,
yep,
so I would just like to talk to the architects, putting together the contracts, you know, you could put dates within the contract. Steve, I just wanted to hear your perspective on why we're pushing for that
I have to plead
date.
the fifth on this. because
Okay,
I don't
that's
know-
great.
I don't know which, I wasn't privy to the conversations
Okay.
or what, that's why I asked about the date.
we
'cause
we
I-
are looking to start early next year to provide a
Okay.
longer construction season that following summer.
Gotcha.
Knowing
Okay.
that we have a lot of renovations to do inside the building and
So I
finish work.
can tell you, our goal is to bid this around the April-May timeframe. Knowing that you guys already have Findorf on board is an advantage to you guys over other schools. We just passed a referendum in Anigo for $54 million this year, and so that's hitting the market sometime around June, but I think ours will get out perhaps a little bit quicker, so it will speed up the construction process. I will tell you from our discussions with, whether it's Myron C. Smith or Bolt, they're telling us that construction is really lagging now, whether it's the lack of skilled craftsmen, whether it's the lack of materials, but they're telling us typical construction on a school like this, we'd expect a year and a half, 18 months. Now you can expect it to be 24 months or longer on it, just because that's the way construction
Which
is
is why I'm
going.
struggling with what
Yeah.
does 4 or 9 days matter?
Yeah.
But that just, I wanted to,
No, and that's.
I felt like I owed it to those people who who have brought it up to me
Yeah.
to at least say my opinion. I don't see the benefit in the construction world for it. But.
Yeah, and again, I plead ignorant to
Yep,
that
no,
'cause I
that's
don't
fine.
know, but-
I guess this isn't directed to.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
them.
no,
I
get
didn't
it.
know if you would go through, like, to me, all this purple shouldn't impact the school day. Blue, purple, whatever this color is. It's the part that's the remodeling of the existing footprint that, to me, impacts things. And
Yep.
I'm struggling seeing it, but I won't be here to vote. That's
Okay.
my problem, and
Yep.
so.
I appreciate the input.
Oh,
Quick questions, coach's office, is it in the new locker?
Yes, those two Fayed / coaches areas on the left, I've brought up as possible areas for coaches, these two. And there's also two storage rooms on the right, which if you guys said to me, we need a separate coach's office, we don't want them in the same room as Fayed, you could turn one of those into a coach's office and the other into a Fayed office, both of them adjacent to the locker rooms. We did look at, if you page down to the old girls' locker room area, that area in orange is gonna be turned over into athletic storage. At least half of it for now, maybe all of it, we don't know. But if you looked at that purple area where the locker rooms are and said, you know what, Steve, we really would like a separate coach's office, that could be one of those areas that you target.
Have you also looked into Fayed storage? They have, Steve, they have a lot of stuff that's stored everywhere.
I know, that's
Okay,
exactly
just-
the point.
If you talk, make sure you talk to them, and athletic storage is really big.
Yeah, and it always is, and I think that girls' locker room area that's been targeted for that, if you gave all of that space away, you're probably at about 1,200, almost 1,500 square, you're probably close to 2,000 square feet. When I did the old wrestling area for storage, that's about 500 square feet, so you'd be doubling or tripling that main space. And the area that we're talking about, where those two storage rooms are on the right side of the locker rooms, those equal about 250 square feet, so that's about half of Kaz's space for wrestling was in that area.
The board meeting room, if you could scroll down,
Yes.
what is the dimensions of that?
It's a typical classroom, so if you looked at that section right now, when it was built for classrooms width-wise, so it's about 30 feet. And what we're in here is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14.
So it'd be larger than this,
16, 18, this is 20, so about 10 feet.
10 more feet, okay.
10 more feet deeper and quite a bit wider as well. And there's a folding partition in there that allows you to have access to what we're calling the break room, and quite a bit more seating in there as well.
The fitness room, looking to not give people access into the building once they're in it? And what about community members? Is there some place that community members, cubby holes, lockers? Because obviously this is probably gonna be a big community thing, that bathroom, something that community members can use that doesn't give them access to the rest of the building. We've got issues with our pool right now that I don't wanna see with the community center, where people can use the community center, but they can't get into the building.
Well, I do need 2 means of egress out of here by code, so, and I've got to exit out, I can't lock it, so they can't go out. So that's something that I think admin team will have to take a look at and see how they want
Well,
to do
I'm
it.
hoping, we're thinking much like the pool, that we're gonna allow community members to access this and use this, and we're gonna find ways to solve that problem.
Yeah, I think, I can reduce some of the exits out of that space, but at least one of those doors on the north side has to stay.
I'm not talking about using it during school time, I'm talking
After.
about on a Saturday or a Sunday, so they can't,
Yeah.
walk around the building.
Well, yeah, and then like you're saying, you need access to bathrooms.
They need access to a bathroom, things like
Right.
that.
I think one of the things that Steve's group has done, and we've completed this after the Nexus portion was done, is that we've done a good job of locking off corridors. So if you look to the left, if it was on the drawing, which it's not, to the left of where that boardroom is, that main corridor that goes north-south through the school, you can't get any further on weekends to the other side, because those corridors have been locked off. So that's been a big change in terms of keeping
Just something to
people
think
out.
about, I know
Yeah.
it's not always solvable.
But your other point about having lockers for
Doesn't have to
people
be
that
big.
use it, even if it's a stack or a roll
Someplace
of
to hang their
lockers.
coats,
Yeah.
shoes, you know, things like that. Doesn't have to be big.
I think the goal was to have community use, but I think working through the logistics will have to be an admin team thing to see how we're gonna accomplish that and maintain what we need from a safety standpoint.
Much like our pool, when people see this, I hope they use it and they wanna vote for the next referendum.
100%.
Any other board members have questions? Steve, anything you want to add to it? Or is it-
No, I think it's just a work in progress, but I think
Yeah.
my hope is that you guys will see that it's starting to come together
Okay.
and we're getting a lot of feedback from everybody. And even after this meeting, the feedback that we get from you or anybody else in the community, very receptive to that, because at the end of the day, the success of this project is really based on the feedback that we get. So if you zoom out on this, the top drawing gives you the overall image of what the concept is. That wall that you see on the right is the wall that is part of the special needs room on the right side, and it's the new windows into the vestibule and the new office. Steve's told me about that wall really being a leaky wall, a wall that we need to fix, a wall that we need to insulate. So the goal is that we're gonna wrap new materials on the right side. The material scheme, we're just trying to work with the brick that you have and the copper that you have and the gray walls of the precast that you see. That gray area that pops up in the middle is really that clear story, Main Street, if you will, that's gonna let some natural daylight into the center of your school and permeate through the rest of the spaces. That M is that precast wall that I was telling you about that will help support the canopy. And it gives you, it's aligned with the road that as you come in to drop your kids off, that M is kind of centered on that road, so it'll be one of the first things that your eye will focus on. That wall to the left is really that corridor wall that leads to tech ed, and there's not really any windows in there. The thought is that why spend the money on the windows on that wall when eventually you might see a gymnasium that's gonna block it up anyway. So we chose to use it as a signage wall, extend the metal wall panels around that, but put kind of a bulletproof material of brick up to at least 12 feet and run that brick course all the way around, not spend the money all the way to the top with the brick, and be somewhat smart with that.
Steve Kaiser, what about the electronic sign that doesn't work on High Street? What are we doing with that?
That had to be determined yet. I mean,
Okay, I'm just asking.
it's really, it may just be, removed at some point. I don't really know.
Okay.
Can't get the parts
'Cause
for it. So
It hasn't worked for like 4 or 5 years now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
As I say, it can't be a whole lot older than 4 or 5 years either.
No, it's older than that, but
Not much.
Wasn't
I think it only worked for like 2-3 years.
Because I thought when we did the science wing, that thing went in, so, which,
No, I
Well,
think it was-
think about that was,
was it a little bit before?
well, that was put on right after the elementary school edition. Because it
Uh,
was owned by city.
So it does
It's gotta
go.
be about 10 years.
Roughly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2008.
One of the things on the elevation too that Steve wanted to make sure we didn't have flag poles on the ground that we had to plow around. These are wall-mounted flag poles, similar to what we did at Croneweather's fire station. It keeps them off the ground, keeps them on the wall, makes it a little bit easier to change, and keeps them clean so nobody gets into it. The M that's there also acts as a planter around the front of the building and blocks out some of that northwest wind coming into that area.
And remember, deep purple, not lavender.
I will not pick the colors. I will let your color committee pick that out so we
No,
can.
no lavender.
We're open to whatever colors, but that's the concept. We haven't shown the other sides. I wanted to test this concept out first and just let you know that we want it to blend in with what you have. I know when we did the science wing, getting the right mix of the cream was not possible because the pit that came from in Iowa no longer makes brick, or it's got a different vein of clay. So the bricks that we used on the science wing were pretty close, and I think if this is incorporated, it'll be a pretty close match to what you have, but it'll be a nice blend of that brick color and the copper that was done with the Kresge Center when that was added on in 1996, and all of that color will blend, and then the gray just blends in with what you have with the precast, so I think it kind of brings it all together.
Thank you for your work.
Of course.
Any other comments, questions?
No, I'm just curious, the flow of traffic, of course, is my line of work. I know what it looks like in the morning and the afternoon. So I foresee, like, especially Pine Street, the number of kids that park, the kids that are walking on 12th Street to go into the parking lot. There's just a lot of foot traffic all around.
Yeah, coming up with sidewalks.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things is separating students, separating parents,
Yes.
separating buses.
Yes.
And whenever we do a school, those are the three things you always try to maintain. I think this will help because it gets the school buses on High Street, it gets the parents in that parking lot to the top,
But it's getting out.
and then getting out, if it's a one-way out, and then taking it to the right.
Right.
So if you got out of that parking lot, went north towards the apartments, and then took a right, it gets you further away from the congestion on 12th
Right, because
Street.
there's 10 that'll go that way and then 6
Right.
the other direction.
And it depends on, the city may want to sign it to say, let's take all this traffic this way. They may wanna, they may say during the hours of 9 to 3, you can only do this.
Have we been in contact with the city of turning some of those streets one way?
We have not
Not
yet.
yet.
We're waiting to see what the
Just-
final design gets to, and then we'll
Gotcha, thank
have
you.
those
I think meeting
conversations.
with Jeff Gates and his staff to see what they'll accept is gonna be pretty important. There's one more drawing on the end, I think a section drawing at the end, just to give you an idea of some of the thought process as we cut sections. In talking with you, Greg, I think, in the discussions with your Midwest labs, I think we can probably take some of the volume out of the tech ed spaces. We were showing it at 18, maybe we can come down to 16 on that. And then as you look at that main street concept, I thought it'd be a good way to incorporate, I think the school, and correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the egg department help grow some of the hanging baskets for the city?
You used to.
Used to, not anymore?
Hopefully coming
Sounds like
year.
a sore subject. Well, we could incorporate some of that in this main street, and some of the bracket, the banner holders or brackets could be fabbed by our metals department. Some of that stuff on that main street could be fabbed by them, so the next phase of this, we'll look at what does that main street look like? What does the natural daylight coming into that space look like? We'll start looking at floor finishes. I did reach out to the sales rep that I have at Wassa Tile and ask them if it's possible that the Kresge family might have an interest in helping us with the material, as they did when we did the middle school cafeteria as well as the sign swing, because we'd like to use Trazo Tile if we can, and if they can be a participant in some kind of discount with the material, that'd be helpful, because I think it'd be a great showpiece for them in that cafeteria or commons area. But that's kind of where we're at right now. The goal is to wrap up our schematic design process by the end of this month and provide some definition, and then scheduled for January 10th, we have a consultant kickoff meeting at the high school where engineers are now coming to be introduced to this project, and they'll start sinking their teeth into this process. So we'll have a lot more detail. Any questions on anything you guys have seen? Appreciate your input, and again, congratulations on passing it. Great victory for this.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you very
Steve.
much.
You're welcome.
When will we be able to get a copy of this?
It's live right now. It's linked on the agenda.
It is?
Yep. If you noticed, I got linked today.
All right, thank you. Item 6D, discussion, presentation by Kevin Mullen and Robert W. Baird on our finance plan. Welcome to the Northwoods.
Yes, thanks. I appreciate that, and also echo Steve's comments. Congrats on passing the referendum. It's great work, and I know an awful lot of effort by everyone here in the room. Spoiler alert, my presentation does not end with nice elevation drawings, but it does end with a timeline. So, three things I want to talk to you guys about this evening. I want to give you, and I'm going to refer to the presentation that Greg had shared with you earlier. I want to give you a rough update in terms of interest rates and give you a context for where you're borrowing relative to where interest rates have been. I want to discuss your plan of finance as it was originally contemplated when you were going to referendum, what that looks like now in light of where we're at in terms of the economic environment that we're in and some of the opportunities that we see for you in that situation. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to end with a timeline that just kind of talks about what next steps look like for you as a board and also for your administrative team. So the first chart that I want to reference is this blue chart. This blue chart is a spot reference for the last 30 years of a 20-year interest rate for a basket of AAA rated bonds. So what does that mean? It means a borrower that was a AAA rated security borrowing a tax exempt bond for 20 years. What did that bond look like on average over the last 30 years? And you can see on the left-hand side of that page that we started, back in the 1995 area, roughly slightly over 6%. And that trend was down all the way through COVID. And actually, coming out of COVID, we were at interest rates that were right around 1%. Recognizing that that was not sustainable for a lot of reasons and to, kind of curb some of the inflation that was in the marketplace, the Fed, the Federal Reserve Bank, started increasing interest rates, which caused this interest rate to go up. And you can see that at that point in time, interest rates went up significantly on a relative basis, but then they kind of settled into this range that we're in right now, which is on average slightly below where we've been over that 30-year period of time. So yes, interest rates have increased since we came out of COVID, but when you look at really where we've been over this last 30-year period of time, we're still borrowing. Your current interest rate environment is still a relatively good interest rate environment for a 20-year borrowing. So that's the purpose of this. When we'll talk about this in a minute, if you're borrowing, you're not a AAA rated borrower. You're a very highly rated borrower, probably in the AA2 to AA3 range. But this is a AAA would be like Dane County is a AAA rated security in the state of Wisconsin. But you still are a very highly rated security. And this just gives you a sense as to where interest rates have been. The second chart that I want to show you brings that blue chart over. So that blue chart again is the borrowing costs that we talked about. The pink chart represents a 2-year treasury investment over that same 20-year period of time. And the significance of that is that you're going to borrow as a tax-exempt borrower for 20 years. And you get an interest rate based on your credit rating and where interest rates are at that point in time. You're not going to need that money when you borrow it until you actually start paying contractors for the work that they're going to be doing. And as was alluded to earlier, you're going to have a fair amount of that money for a good portion of that period of time. You get to reinvest that as a taxable investment. So a 2-year treasury is a good estimate for what that 2-year investment looks like. And you can see there have been a few times where that reinvestment rate is higher than the borrowing rate. And that means that if you're borrowing that money, you can make arbitrage income. The federal government is a little bit sticky on that point. They don't care as long as you don't borrow too much, and as long as you spend it within a certain period of time. So we wanted to be cognizant of that as we put this plan together and put you in a position to take advantage of this unusual situation where short-term interest rates or that reinvestment rate is higher than the borrowing rate, because it means that you can make more on that borrowed money while you're waiting to spend it, and that money can be used to be put in the project, which is a real benefit to you. So that's one thing we wanted to be cognizant of as we put the plan together.
I thought school districts couldn't arbitrage.
So, big question, or a big answer is they can't, but there are rules. If you stay within that box,
Okay.
you can get arbitrage income. So
You
we're,
got that, Rod?
Yeah.
Okay.
so
We'll earn interest.
turning the page, I want to piggyback on that. That's one of the points I want to reference. So when we put the plan of finance together, and I'm now referring to a much more boring page, we wanted to acknowledge that situation. And as Kevin has mentioned, the federal government is really careful. They don't like the fact that you borrow on a tax-exempt basis and then can reinvest and make money. So they have really strict rules about who and when who can do it and when that can happen. One of those rules says if you're a small issuer, if you borrow $15 million or less for a construction project like this, you can have 3 years to earn money, and they don't care if you spend all the money in the third year, you get to keep all of your arbitrage income. If you were to borrow $16 million, you'd have to spend it in a 2-year spend down stream, which isn't bad. You'd have to spend 10% in the first 6 months, 45% in the first year, and basically all of it in 2 years. And if you made arbitrage income, you'd have to give the difference between what you borrowed at and what you earned back to the federal government, which also is not horrible. You'd still make money, But I think you can be in a better position than that using the 3-year exemption. So that was one of the thoughts that we had. But we basically had 4 goals that we kept in mind when we put this plan together. The first one, which is, in my mind is the most important one, is that you had said to the public that this impact was going to be 17 cents. We want to be at 17 cents or less with the plan moving forward. So that was our first goal. The second 2, we want to minimize the total interest cost to you. We want to do it borrow in an efficient way so that the interest cost and your rating is the best that you can get and reflects it in a low interest cost at the time you borrow. And we also want to give you the flexibility in the current marketplace to borrow in a way that you can avoid, that you have control over when you borrow and how you borrow. So that was important. And the last, as I alluded to, was we want to give you the opportunity to make as much money on the borrowed money while you're waiting to spend it. So those were the 4 goals. So as I mentioned, we're going to get a bond rating. You're currently rated by Moody's as a AA2 rated borrower, which is a really good rating. I suspect moving forward that we would maintain that rating. There's 2 things that could create pressure on that. One is that you have had declining enrollment, and that's always something that is a concern to rating agencies. And the other is that financially you're in a very strong position, but Moody's always looks at what's happening with regard to fund balance and things of that nature. So I suspect we're going to stay at AA2 or AA3, but I suspect we'll be at that AA2 rating. You were recently, your existing rating was reviewed back in June of this year, of 24. So not much has changed since that period of time, so that's our expectation. The state allows you to borrow for a total period of 20 years, maximum of 20 years. When we put the original plan of finance together, we assumed 2 borrowings, both 20-year borrowings. One borrowed in 25, one borrowed in 26. When you combine those together, if they're both 20-year borrowings, the overall project is financed over a 21-year period of time. We think that that's important because these improvements are going to obviously benefit users, the community much beyond that 20-year period of time, but you want to make sure that the people that are using it share in the cost of that project, and so we felt that that was important. So in crafting it, we've carved out, and we'll talk about it in a second, it's my version of an elevation. I'll show you a plan of finance in a second. But we've split the borrowing into 2 phases. Roughly $15 million borrowed this year in 2025, and then the balance borrowed next year in 2026. I think we'd like to take advantage of that small issuer exception, and then we'd like to do a couple of things to give you flexibility in order to borrow. One of those is that we would consider having the board adopt a parameters resolution. So there are 2 ways that you can approve the borrowing. One is, you'd sell the bonds on the day that you were approving it. So, fast forward, to a Tuesday sometime in later January or February. In the morning, the bonds would be sold. That evening, the board would approve a resolution with the interest rates. That really locks you in, like 2 months ahead of time, to that date. What we've seen, which is much more common, is that the board would approve a parameters resolution that would describe in general what the borrowing looked like, what the costs look like, what the repayment structure looks like, and a rate not to exceed. All of those things would be defined in the parameters resolution, and then the board would give the board president and the superintendent the ability to sign off on the final scale or the final pricing and report back to the board as to what the specifics were. That allows you to not have to sell on a board date, on a meeting date. It gives you that flexibility between the time the parameters resolution is passed and when it's appropriate to go to market. So, I think that will give you a lot of flexibility with regard to timing. We talked about that second phase of the borrowing. And then lastly, we assumed when we put this original plan of finance together, roughly a year and a half ago, the annual growth in value would be at 2%. So we showed your payments growing at roughly 2% a year to maintain a constant tax rate, obviously your growth in value has been much more than that, but a lot of that growth has been inflationary as opposed to new things. So we've stuck with a 2% growth rate moving forward because, you know, really, I think if we were to use anything more than that, it would compress the payments and put more pressure on taxpayers than is necessary. So a lot of conversation before I get to the page which shows you the actual plan of finance. But before I go, you know, kind of through that, do you have any questions on the general summary I just described?
Do we have to make a decision in advance? I think we do. Are you anticipating that some of these or all of these bonds will be callable?
Yes.
So the board could prospectively, in the future, still look to put money aside to prepay the bonds, saving the taxpayers even more interest?
Yep. It's a great question.
Through defeasance?
Yes, great question. In the market right now, the kind of conventional call feature for a borrowing, so we talked about selling a bond that's a 20-year bond. Bondholders that have that bond issue will offer you the ability to prepay it. Right now, if it's an 8-year call, meaning that, you know, for the first 8 years it's not callable, but after 8 years it is callable, there's no change in the interest rate that they would ask for. So would, you know, if they wanted a 4% coupon on that bond, if it was callable in 10 years, it would still be a 4%. At 8 years, it's a 4%. At 7 years, that investor is probably going to want a higher interest rate for that additional flexibility. So it could be callable the day after you sell the bonds, but the interest rate would be higher. So an 8-year call is kind of that sweet spot where you can prepay the loan. But as you've done in the past, you can defease the borrowing, meaning you can set aside money and prepay the bond, put it in escrow between the time that you set the money aside and just set it aside in a trust to pay on the 8th year. So there are 2 ways to approach that call.
Can we arbitrage on that too if interest
No.
rates allowed us to?
The federal government is really, they're very down on that.
I
Yeah,
understand.
you can earn up to the bond yield, but nothing more.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
but,
But I
so
think-
yeah, short answer is yes, you have the ability to prepay, and then these would be callable also after 8 years.
But to that point too, is we've had some local conversations, especially maybe around that second bond sale, to see if any local banks might have an interest in
Issuing the debt.
issuing the debt, which then would become more of a traditional type loan that would,
That's for the second part though.
you're right, which would basically be callable at any moment if you set it up similar to how you'd set up a mortgage,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term.
And, it's been our experience recently, that banks are interested in some, but, they haven't been real active in the tax exempt bond market recently. They're willing to lend money, but rates have not been in line with where municipal and tax exempt rates have been. So we would certainly look at that. I think it's always important to make sure that the local bank is included and has the opportunity to be included in that bond sale.
Yep.
So, go ahead.
One last question.
Sure.
Before the referendum passed, there was a discussion amongst the board about the possibility of using, I think the number, if I remember from a few months ago, was up to $500,000 of our fund balance toward the overall construction project as well. We haven't talked about this since the referendum passed, but you mentioned that Moody's, the rating service company, they might look askance to us drawing down our fund balance. Is there a target that they want us to attempt to retain on an annualized basis? I mean, right now, well, after December 2nd, our balance went back up because we got a payment from the state. But prior to that, we were at our low water mark. All districts are at that time. Some districts have to borrow for short-term expenses. But is there a percent target of fund balance of our total budget that they would prefer that we maintain?
There is. It's not, and they won't give you a percentage.
Okay.
But when we look at Moody's medians, fund balance is one of the metrics, and there are many. that they look at in terms of their credit quality.
Just like any rating,
Yeah.
credit rating.
You're right, right. And so I would say, you know, for someone in your credit category, they're probably looking for something between 20 and 30% fund balance for.
And that's where we're at 26 and a half,
Yeah.
27 right now.
And so, you know, that's one of, when they look at your fund balance, that's one of the things that they are concerned about. The other is if you had 40% fund balance, 50% fund balance, and had been drawing down on it, they're gonna wanna know why. They don't care that you've drawn down to 30, they care that you were at 40 and now have drawn down to 30.
And to that point too, I think one of the things that for the group is when that rating call comes, there's a number of factors involved in the rating, the metrics, like you said, that we have no control over.
Most, right.
You know, yeah, like socioeconomic of your community, your growth rate, you know, like
Enrollments, yeah.
industry growth, and we have no control over a lot of those factors,
Yeah.
which basically puts us at a point right away.
Yes.
That's
And
why
in
Dane
fact-
County is high, because they have all
Yeah,
those other
yeah.
factors.
And the big one is, you know, management, you get a management score. Every school district in the state of Wisconsin basically starts with an A management score, A rating management score. Because in their mind, I'm not saying, this is just their opinion, that you have very little control over your budget because you have a revenue limit. And so, you know, you can only raise your revenue to the point that the state allows you to raise. And so they feel like that is a big restriction on your ability to manage the operations of the school district. You can, you know,
They
manage
just wanna-
lower.
They want to make sure we aren't using our fund balance for recurring
So
expenses.
yes, with regard, and that's the big question with regard to fund balance, but also, you know, was it a conscious board decision? Was it a planned decision? You know, they're very thoughtful about what your approach to that.
When we
use
go
was.
to when it's time to go to market, will we be able to, is it worthwhile to try to see two options? One with callable bonds, one without? I mean, right now you said the interest rate will be the same, so we ought to use the callable ones in case
Oh,
we want
yes,
to.
yeah.
But we don't have to call at the time that we could.
Right,
We could just continue to carry them out and not prepay the debt.
correct, correct. I think at the very, like, every bond issue that we are going to market with right now has an 8 or a 9 year call.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would definitely do that. There would,
Yeah, I
if it was
agree.
non-callable, there would be no benefit to you.
I
See,
agree.
it's a free pass, so
Yep.
to speak. So in looking at this spreadsheet, which is the pro forma, I just wanted to kind of give you a sense as to what this looks like as it lays out. So on the right-hand side, we have two dates, your levy year and the payment year. So for example, your levy year for the current budget you just approved, the levy 2024 year is for taxes and payments in 2025. So your first payment on this borrowing is in the levy, you had in your current tax bills, there's a portion of the payment for a payment on this borrowing in 2025. In the blue section, we assumed a $15 million borrowing in 2025. And you'll notice that most of those principal payments are on the long end of the borrowing. That's intentional. I'll talk about that in a second if you'd like. We assumed an interest rate of 4.41%, which is about 30 to 35 basis points higher than what you'd be able to borrow at today in the current market. So, you know, that would be like in the 4.05% range if you were to borrow today. So we left a little cushion in that. And then the second borrowing, you'll notice those payments are primarily on the front end of the borrowing, with the exception of one piece on the very long end. That's that 21st year. That we've left at an estimate of 5.25%, which is very conservative in the current market, but I just wanted to leave that as a marker. The annual payments, if you add the principal and interest in the blue to the principal and interest in that light green, plus your existing debt service, which is on the far left-hand side, the annual payments based on your existing Fund 39 debt, you're gonna get your total debt service under column A over on the right side. We've assumed that you're going to get state aid. The year after you spend the money, you get about, you know, I think your state aid And the third tier, we're assuming is about 15%. You're gonna get a 15% of that back through the aid formula to give you your net debt service. And then we've equated that to a tax rate. What I want to point to is that, you'll see the first year, that impact is roughly 16 cents above where it was for that debt service last year, your debt payment last year compared to what it would be this year, 16-cent increase. And then moving forward, it drops to about $1 until you get out to where that green box is. We've left the debt service level moving forward. What that means is that your tax rate year over year, assuming 2% growth in value, would continue to decrease. The reason we did that is because it's likely that you would have other projects at some point that you would start to consider. And we want to make sure that there's some room to do that and give you tools to consider that moving forward. So that's generally what we're thinking. I think this plan makes sense. We had assumed when we put the plan together that the combined borrowing cost of the two phases would be about 5.05%. Based on what we're showing right now, it comes in at about 4.58%, using, again, that 5.25 for the second leg. And that already is about $1.5 million less than what was used in the projection originally. So I feel like it's good momentum. Last page, I promised it would be here, a timeline. So this timeline basically provides the big markers of things that need to occur and who's responsible. You'll see there are a lot of things that are checked for the administrative team. As Greg indicated, we're going to have a conference call and discuss the credit quality of the school district and do a credit review that's scheduled or anticipated to occur sometime in February. But the two board responsibilities, the first is just this informational piece tonight. But on January 20th, I've got that at least penciled in that we could have a draft of that parameters resolution prepared for you so that you can consider that on January 20th, if that works for you. That would kind of start the process. We would begin doing all the other things that need to be done in order to bring the bonds to market. But that would then allow you the flexibility really to price and enter the bond market anytime after the 20th. Using this schedule, we would assume that funds would be, here in the district, probably in the very early part of spring, like the beginning of April, using this schedule. With bonds marketed sometime in February. A lot of information, I know,
Yeah.
and not nearly as interesting as Steve's.
So, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Kevin?
Quick question, so, the current debt represents about 25% of this total cost?
So it's,
I'm looking in
Yeah.
second last column that says combined cost. I mean, that's not necessarily that
Probably.
includes
Yeah.
state aid, I understand.
yeah.
But how much is our current debt?
So you have energy efficiency debt that's remaining outstanding. You have, bear with me.
I know
that
it's in our
number.
book, I just.
Say
I got that
14.5, is that what you follow?
14 million,
I don't know, I'm guessing here.
seems a little high.
Yeah, well. You follow the existing
Yeah,
debt first
no,
column,
you,
eh?
you have about 14.5 in principal outstanding.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I can leave this with you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for the presentation.
My
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
All right, item 6E, presentation on summer school. Safe travels home.
See you, Kevin. Thank you.
All right, here tonight just to share a little bit of an update of where we're headed for this year's summer school program. You'll notice that it will look very similar to what it did last year. We found quite a bit of success in how we structured it and the classes that we offered. So we're going to continue with a very similar structure. One of the things just to showcase is kind of when we're thinking and looking to be responsive of the potential of that early start date. So looking at starting our classes in June, at June 9th, and then wrapping up by July 10th. We would still be looking at having 5 weeks of class, but kind of pushing through that 4th of July week as the 4th of July ends up on a Friday this year. So it'll get us out a little bit earlier to allow for a little bit of a break for our families and our staff is the goal. Continuing with that Monday through Thursday structure, and also looking to have that half day where we will be able to have breakfast and lunch available for our students each day. Looking to showcase who will be able to participate, and we have our kindergarten through 8th grade learners in our classes that will be academic and enrichment. We will continue to have our high school recovery program as well. Other specialized opportunities, which I'll touch on in the slides coming up. You'll see a variety of classes will be offered for our kindergarten through 8th grade students that include enrichment but also academic opportunities. One of the biggest updates that you'll see with summer school this year really relates to our reading classes. And so in the coming months, we'll be looking at our Act 20 requirements and what that means for what we will have to offer during summer school classes for students who do qualify for those reading plans. So that'll be kind of one of our big new additions, as well as continuing math offerings. We've had a huge interest in those outdoor opportunities where we utilize the forest. We've done different like fishing classes and utilized just our local resources here. So we plan to continue to do that, as well as bringing in some of the other pieces like art, music, of course, different physical activities, and just creative building opportunities. We will be taking, or we did explore kind of locations for summer school this year, and in talking a little bit with Steve and kind of our buildings and grounds and looking at our overall goals this summer, we will continue to offer our 2nd through 8th grade classes at the high school. We feel confident that what will be happening this summer will be more contained. We'll be able to still offer classes there. We had kind of drop off pick up in the front of the high school, so we'll do that the same. So it really won't impact using the building. We use the pool, we use the gyms, all of those places, so that'll work well there. We will continue to have, of course, driver education during that time, and swim is extremely popular. And then having our elementary school more where we have our kindergarten, our 1st grade, our youngest learners, as well as our Fun for All Abilities courses. And then moving forward, our goals as we come into the next few months is getting our parents and families on board, starting to get those communications flowing, as well as communications with staff and coordinating what those classes look like, staffing, and just the logistics behind that. So just planning around those details and continuing to make sure that we're adhering with the Act 20 guidelines as we design those reading classes. That's kind of it in a nutshell. Last year we had a lot of positive feedback. We did also kind of put out a survey to staff and took their feedback into consideration. So as we're really diving into the planning and more of the details, we'll be sure to use that feedback as we construct those courses. Any questions?
Questions about the
Yes.
framework of summer school?
When it comes to like staffing and paying for it, I'm wondering, do you get paid a set amount? You know, or do you get paid based on what you make? Is your pay an extension of what you make during the year?
So for teachers, last year we did increase that wage, so it is a dollar amount. It went from $25 to I believe $28 an hour, so it's just an hourly rate. And then support staff is what they make during the school year, so it is an hourly rate as they're an hourly employee. So yes, because we have a combination of teaching staff and support staff employed during that time. Mm-hmm. Any other questions about the program or what to expect? Okay.
Thank you for putting this
All right.
together.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
6F, discussion, presentation on school and district report cards.
Yeah, Rob was unable to attend tonight, so I would say that if you have any questions that we can't answer, we will turn it over to him. But overall, our report card scores were good. As with anything else, we're not content on where they are. But the one thing I do want to spend a little bit of time on is there was a convoluted process to how report card scores were calculated this year. And I'll try to explain it, and then I'll turn it over to the principals to explain in more depth, because they're more familiar with it. They've worked with it more than I have in their realm. But what happened is our old cut scores were to the NAEP, which is the national test. And Wisconsin wanted to Wisconsinize the cut scores, so they brought together a group of individuals to change the cut scores to Wisconsinize them, and the cut scores dropped. What happened then is DPI, based on the dropping of the cut scores, looked at the performance on the report cards and deemed that too many schools would have made too big of a jump. So they changed the algorithm of the report card scores to reflect to decrease report card scores based on the new cut scores to basically be in line with where they were last year. So what I will tell you, in my personal opinion, knowing I fully understand I'm on YouTube right now, I don't put a tremendous amount of stock in report card scores just because of this convoluted thing. I don't really know the true value of what their scores are in a roundabout way, because of it's a constantly changing target. I've never been a huge proponent of putting a whole lot of stock in a report card score, just also simply because the percentages on the wheel, if you can go, Tom, to one of the district report card score, the very first one, go up. Isn't there, the very first one has our report card? Yeah. Like all of these percentages, these priority area weights, they change every year. So it's not like one year, it's not like every piece of that pie is 25%. And what's 28% this year could be 22% next year, and something else increases in size. So it's like they keep changing the goalposts on you in a roundabout way, which is kind of the reason, and really was the impetus for us as an administrative team to start having hard conversations about creating our own local report card score that we feel better reflects how we are doing as a school district and as a school building. Because I think in some cases there's value to the report card information per se, but not necessarily the score that you get, is what I'm trying to say. So we maintained the level we were at in last year. Our scores went up a little bit, but I'm going to turn it over. Tom actually sat down with somebody from CISA, and basically they reversed engineered the report card score. So I don't know, Tom, if you want to touch base on that.
Yeah, you explained pretty much the overall idea. By changing the levels of which you meet certain criteria, it's impossible to compare year to year, and by lowering that number, you saw such a huge jump that they were worried maybe about what that headline might be. So instead they created an algorithm. So they took your achievement score, they times it by, they multiplied it by 97% or 0.97, and then they subtracted 4.37. Where the 4.37 comes from, they won't say, or what they did. But so that achievement score, if you want to know what it would be, right, you could divide it by 0.97, add down your 4.37 back on. That would be your score. But I guess, I would echo that this is just another good example, like Greg said, of why it's important to really take a look at your local data to assess where you're at. Because the other impact of this is now, and it's not in this slideshow, but if you go look at our district report card on the PDF on the website, for example, the achievement score traditionally is an average of 3 years of your performance. Well, by changing all of this, it no longer becomes an average. So this year's score is not comparable to the last 3 years' score. You can also, it also won't display
the graph comparing year to year because they knew that the numbers aren't comparable. So now you have an achievement score with 1 year, you know, so the report cards from year to year continue to not reflect that. You know, at the high school level, we're going to see changes with the ACT test next year. Not sure what it's going to look like at the statewide, but nationally they're changing it. So what is that going to do to our achievement score at that point? So when we look at like how to measure our success year to year, that local data becomes really important because as the state continues to do things like this report card becomes hard to wade through, you know. So another example with this algorithm, the other thing they did was they didn't want to describe how somebody could maybe go down. So if your achievement went lower, they actually just kept you at the same as last year. They said, well, we're not going to decrease anybody. You can maintain the score, but if you did better, we're going to take you down through this process. So, you know, I just caution the comparables from district to district, especially this year, when you look at these different scores, how they were calculated. You know, I can just give kind of an overview as a reminder of kind of what all the 4 areas are. As we mentioned, the achievement area, this is the one that was most heavily impacted by the change in cut scores and therefore the algorithm. So if you took that priority score, the 67.2, divided it by 0.975 and added 4.37, that's what our score was prior to the change in the math.
So it would be higher than the 67.2.
Correct, somewhere around 71, 72-ish. The growth, this one was not impacted, and so if we were to take a look, you know, at something that we could really find value from this report card, it would be this, right? This area was not impacted by that measurement. This is the score in which you're measuring a student's growth from year to year on their test scores. Are you taking somebody from basic to proficient, proficient to advanced? That's this measurement, and this was not impacted by that change. Your target group outcomes, that's where the state takes the 25% lowest performing students in your district and compares them to the other students. Are they growing at a equal or faster rate than your other students, essentially closing the achievement gap, or do you continue to have an achievement gap where the growth score of those students does not match the growth score of your higher achieving students? So this could be a measurement of your intervention systems, you know, systems in place. Are you closing gaps or do they continue to exist?
And one of the things I want to point out before he moves is this year's score. This was our score last year. As you can see on this specific one, we went up 5 points as a district.
This is a breakdown of the target groups that measure achievement and growth. On track to graduation, this is another area that it becomes murky when you're kind of looking at year to year. Out of the 4 categories, this is the only one that's actually lag data. So this does not include any data from last year. It's actually 2 years ago. So when you look at this, your other 3 areas are only factoring, well, not only factoring, but are using last year's data as part of their average. Your on track to graduation is lag data, which means last year's is not included at all. Your I guess most recent year that's in those averages is actually 2 years ago, because of the way attendance and graduation and things like that report out of our WISE systems to the state. So there's that. Again, this is data that pulls based on how things are reported, just gives you, this does not impact your score whatsoever, this data, it just is a way of knowing where you stand compared to some of the state averages in post-secondary prep.
Questions? Comments? Anybody? So, to add additional context, not a single school district in the entire state this year, let me reword it. Every school district in the state was graded at least at meeting expectations. Even though in Beloit, the proficiency grade for reading is only 15.1%. They got a grade of meeting state expectations. Milwaukee, for math, has an 11.9% proficiency. They received a meeting expectations. By the way, these cut score increases have been going on since COVID. It didn't just happen this year. This year's was just more, more transparent. And so I do agree with the philosophy that we should be comparing ourselves to last year for our school district and the year before. And are we continually doing better every year with whatever type of curriculum adjustment? You know, most of you know, I think I would like to see us have more of an emphasis, an additional emphasis on advanced or AP courses. We do a pretty good job, but if we're talking the whole state and we're below the state average in things that ought to matter, at least in my perspective, much of the state is not very good to be comparing ourselves to. So, you know, dual enrollment, that's awesome. Industry credential type programs, that's outstanding. That's where we need to continue. And so this referendum project, where we've got an increased emphasis on tech ed and CTE, that's going to help our district, and we'll be able to see our scores continue to grow the way we want them to. So, but the grading system that the state has put in place.
And Kevin, I think you need to compare, when you say year to year, you need to look at the same kids. Every class is different, unique.
It is.
And so you can't go and say, well, this year our juniors did this. Well, you know, what did we do?
But we do that with our ETC scores.
I agree. Maybe sometimes we shouldn't do that. We should really look at, where did I go from one year to the next year with the same group of kids?
It's not like we're not only trying to look at 8 or 10 kids.
Yeah.
It's a whole class.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but I think that's where, in some cases, the progress monitoring stuff provides more value, because you're looking at how a kid does on a year-to-year basis in terms of growth during the year, growth from one year to the next, versus one snapshot in time on a single day in April. You know, because that's, you know, I mean, you talk about AP, you know, I back when our current governor was the state superintendent, I pushed back on him because he only talked about AP courses, and I said as a district we were moving away from AP and going to more dual enrollment,
which is great,
because it's not all predicated on passing one test on a given day in May. It's your ability to do stuff over the year that provides value as well. And so, and I said, but you only ever talk about this column, and you don't ever talk about this column. And I pushed back on him on that a little bit, and the state still has not really grasped that ability. They like to trumpet this part of it and don't necessarily talk a lot about that part, which to me is unfortunate, because there's a lot of value. There's a lot of value in AP. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But one of the issues I do have with AP is everything on an AP, your ability to get credits, is based on your ability to pass a test during a given window of time in May. Regardless if you're sick, regardless if you had a bad day, regardless if, you know, you were puking the night before, or you had a parental issue, or whatever, broke up with your significant other, who knows. Where a dual enrollment is more like a college situation where you're graded over a semester and your ability to do well in a semester, because we all know people's your very best on a given day is not the same every day. You have good days and bad days. You know, you want everybody to do the best they can on a given day, knowing that that's not going to be peak performance every day, because that's not sustainable in life. So that's one of the issues I do have. I have pushed back on that at the state level. It usually falls on deaf ears, just like we've pushed back on the report card, and that doesn't seem to matter much.
Well, there is an election in April.
Correct. Correct.
Any other comments about the report cards? All right, thank you. Item number 7. Dustin, welcome.
Welcome.
I want to first apologize for not imagining how long item number 6 was going to take. You've now been fully indoctrinated into school board presentations.
Yeah.
And in the next 4 months, while I'm still board president, if you are able to make it to the meetings and we have a lengthy item number 6, I will make the motion that we amend our agenda to move you ahead of those presentations so you can get back to your schoolwork and your life.
It's okay, I didn't hate
We look forward to your presentation tonight and welcome.
See what you missed and you probably won't be back.
And so your presentation, please.
So, good evening, esteemed faculty. As the Mosinee student body heads into winter break, they continue to work hard in all aspects of their education. To start, recently high schoolers attended the academic achievement ceremony where sophomores, juniors, and seniors were awarded for their academic achievements from this past year. This year, the students did not disappoint, especially those earning a 30 or higher on their ACT exam, which included more than 9 seniors. For National Honor Society members, their month has been filled with fundraising for various initiatives. Within this past week alone, members collected items to give to Nathaniel Hanley and his mother for Nathaniel's recovery from recent medical procedures. Chapter officers compiled the items into baskets and will be handing them out soon. National Honor Society also hosted a Miracle Minute for Melina and Peyton Caratini, raising just under $600 for anything that they may need amidst their mother's passing. Junior students have received their invitation to the Honor Society. Those who are accepted to the society will be inducted within the next few months. After their booth's success at the Christmas Craft Show, Mosinee FCCLA can sponsor a family for the holiday season. They recently shopped for gifts, wrapped them, and now will be sending them off to their family. The club also participated in Day with the Milwaukee Bucks. Here they toured Pfizer Forum and listened to a panel of workers and interns on how they achieved their position at Pfizer. Students learned how to successfully navigate the transition between graduation and life after high school into the workforce. They also visited the downtown public market where they participated in the broad culinary scene of Milwaukee. When FCCLA members return from their winter break, they will wrap up their projects to compete in February, where they hope to send more members off to state once again. Student Senate is working towards their holiday-themed Hot Cocoa with Friends event at the elementary school. For this, Senate members will spend the day with the elementary students, reading books and enjoying hot chocolate. The club is also fundraising for other initiatives through an egg roll fundraiser currently. Finally, Mosinee DECA has been ringing bells for the Salvation Army, and they will soon finish with an estimated $1,000 raised. Soon, members will also start raising money for Special Olympics of Wisconsin to participate in the polar plunge once again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good job.
Jolynn and Tom, you need to talk about egg rolls and visits to the public market. You know.
That's all Bradford.
That was awesome. Good report, thank you. No items for public forum? Okay.
And Dustin, you can go if you want to.
Yes, you are excused if you'd like to.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I just don't want you to think we have you locked down here.
No. Absolutely. All right, item number 9 is the consent agendas. I'll seek a motion to approve.
We did pull one item. We pulled item 6B, the.
Is it personnel?
Yes.
Yep.
For gymnastics. Oh, sure. Bring to the full board.
Okay, any other items being pulled? Nothing from finance.
Okay. Nope.
Okay, thank you. I'll seek a motion to approve with the exception of the gymnastics.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Diane Gorman,
I'll second.
second by Calandra Zebro. Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, gymnastics.
So we had some discussion and Trevor weighed in and at first the recommendation was to look to approve a middle school coach, at which I think maybe a month or two at that time we did not proceed from the recommendation we received from the admin team. But Trevor came tonight wishing to see if we would possibly look to open that up again and offer that position for a middle school coach. We did not have a recommendation coming out of the committee. I felt like the numbers are there to support another coach, that we could possibly look to restructure what we currently have and try to make it work for this year. And then possibly look next year of what we can do to bring up our numbers. Ladies, if you want to offer any more?
Question?
I just also really quickly wanted to clarify that our admin recommendation from a couple months ago was really to not do anything at the time pending to see what our numbers were going to be in the middle
Yes.
school. We thought it was early to approve a coach, considering we weren't sure what our participation numbers were gonna be. And then Trevor requested this come back forward, hence we asked him to attend tonight to speak to that. So I'm sorry, Paul.
And last week at agenda setting, Diane and I decided to provide instruction, direction to the superintendent to add this item back to the personnel committee. And actually, there was a discussion between the two of us, and Calandra was there for a little bit of the meeting as well last week, that it was more than likely going to be pulled out of the consent agenda for this discussion. Paul?
Do we currently have just one middle school coach?
We have two high school and no,
And
one
this
middle
was
school. One middle school.
And we wanted to add another?
No.
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 This was to replace the one we left, but now correct me if I'm wrong, prior to last year, how many coaches did we have for gymnastics?
We had 3 last year.
No, prior to last year.
I don't have an answer.
I don't know, but I do know on our pay schedule, we have 4. We have high school head, high school assistant, middle school head, middle school assistant.
Okay.
I was told by Chris Schley that a couple years ago, the assistant middle school position was pulled.
Okay.
Greg, what he's referring to is in the handbook, there's like a 2 behind a gymnastics head and a 2 behind.
Oh, depending, okay.
Okay, please, Donna.
So, when I was still working in the office at school and we did have, I know we had 2 middle school coaches. And I'm not sure what the numbers were. I think we had a little bit more, like maybe 10 kids or something like that. It wasn't a large number, but I think it was a little larger than the number that we have now. But I know we did at one time have 2 coaches for middle school.
Trevor, you want to speak to the numbers?
Sure. What I'll do first is I'll just kind of explain what I explained earlier today, that in gymnastics, you only need 5 kids to have a team. That's how they get scored. So currently, we have 8 high school athletes. Currently signed up, we have 6 middle school, but middle school doesn't really start until after break, so we could have some more kids sign up at this point. One of the things that we have currently is both coaches at the high school were issued contracts and they've already been working for a month and a half. So basically what we're asking one of those coaches is to leave the high school program and then take over the middle school program. Right now, number of coaches in other school districts in our conference, Rylander has 15 kids in high school and middle school total. We have 14, so they have 1 more than we do. They have 2 high school coaches, they have 2 middle school coaches. Antigo has 12 kids in their program, they have 2 high school coaches, 2 middle school coaches. Medford has 9 kids at their high school program, they have 2 high school coaches. Lakeland had 5 kids last year, they have 2 high school coaches. The reason they have 2 high school coaches is gymnastics is highly skilled and technical. When you're at practice, you need spotters. You need those coaches there for safety. That is the biggest reason you need coaches at the high school level. They do very complicated moves and they're dangerous. So basically, what we would do is take a high school coach, and I already know I've talked to both of them, they do not want to coach middle school. So that leaves us with a middle school position that we have to fill.
So I guess what are we asking for? The permission?
Well, we would have to approve the position.
We'd have to approve the hiring.
If we didn't approve the position, there would be no middle school gymnastics. Correct?
Well, unless
There
you,
doesn't,
unless you have the high school coach.
right.
They said they don't, right?
Well,
Or they could have a volunteer, correct?
Right. A lot of sports offer volunteers. I mean, there was a lot of kids out for wrestling, which is also another very technical and dangerous sport. And how many coaches did we have when we had 50 kids at the program at that time? We had 2. And we had a lot of parents that volunteered that were in the room that helped for those nights.
If you're
So-
looking at the numbers, the average for gymnastics is 4 coaches per athlete. Wrestling currently is 4.5. So we basically have the same amount per student coaches for wrestling right now as we do as gymnastics. Or if
Were you talking middle school? You
Yes.
said 50 of?
No, this was, I'm just saying
Okay.
that, you know, we have asked for studies for a lot of years, and because we currently don't have a policy in place
Could be
to say the number of students, you know, or athlete, per coach, for each sport, because each sport is gonna be a little bit different. You know, and we've never, it just doesn't, we haven't seen that or have that yet.
We're getting to a bigger thing here, which is how do we give kids opportunities and still not waste our money?
I agree.
And I get that, and
becomes
that's
a budget
something that's-
issue.
The bigger issue is that's something we should probably, I don't mean waste our money, how can we, like with lacrosse?
Correct.
We co-opt. And I'm not saying we should do that, I'm just saying we should probably develop some type of policies and procedures that over a period of time, that if we have programs that are not sustaining for safety, whatever it is, that we take a look at how we can best support them through what we do and financially. So I understand where things are coming, but from what I understand, I went to the middle school practice, that coach has been there for a while, right? Or been helping out for a while?
no.
The middle school coach?
No.
No, okay.
No, we just had a first
Okay.
general meeting Monday, yesterday. But the official practice doesn't start until,
But the high school coaches were never told that they would have to go to the middle school
no.
when they were hired.
No. They signed high school contracts. No,
No comment.
Well, I would think that, do they not use the same equipment?
yes.
Are they using it at the same time that the high schools are, about the same time?
That's a good point, because the middle school schedule is totally different than the high school schedule. There's different meets, there's different times of practice. Middle school practice is right after school. Our high school coach can't get there until 5:30 because that's because of her job. So that's when they practice later. So that's another big issue as well.
May I ask, what is the dollar amount the middle school coach would be getting paid?
2,000.
$2,000? Okay.
I don't think it's a money issue as much as it is a space issue.
Right.
I mean, it's
Okay.
$2,000, to me, it's that you've got a lot of other sports with a lot of other kids who are
Learning
in
the space.
gyms until 9:30 at night, 10 years old, 9 years old till 9:30 at night because they can't, there's so many of them, and then you have prime gym, prime time for a couple of kids. It's not really, I don't think, a money issue. I think it's a space issue.
Which brings us to another point with the new fitness room. What happens to our old fitness room, might be something that to look at. It could be a wrestling gymnastic room. I'm not saying it's going to be.
We've had conversations with the wrestling program about having them take over the old weight room, the current weight room.
And I'm not
Because they don't have
suggesting we
a,
do that.
right, wrestling does not have a permanent spot. They roll out mats in the middle school cafeteria.
My personal opinion is I love to offer kids as many opportunities as we can, but I really think at some point we should come up with some policies and procedures about our athletics or clubs or whatever it is that we can say, okay, we can't support you, we have to co-op with somebody. We have to find ways to solve that. I don't ever want to see us lose programs, but I also want us to be financially sound and give them a window, give people windows to say if this can't improve in 2-3 years, this is the avenue we're going to have to go
We have
through.
done that. We've had this,
Okay.
this is probably year 9 of gymnastics being brought to us.
Right.
So,
Well, again, it's just a position, and I just didn't want to see us, without looking at other avenues, as Paul mentioned, as Megan had brought up during our meeting, that we can be more creative the way that we're using the people and possible volunteers, schools, colleges. There's other people out there that help. They're always willing to help.
There's one issue I have, and just from a coaching standpoint, is I never like to see a program without 2 coaches, and I'll tell you just from an injury standpoint. When one person or somebody gets hurt or could get hurt or whatever, if you just have one coach, and I'm not saying volunteer coaches or whatever, you could have a liability that is in place where even if we have just one middle school coach, I would hope that somebody would be down there with them to assist them if something's going on, because gymnastics is a very physically demanding sport.
Well, then injuries happen.
Very.
That's where you have the parent volunteers
Yes.
or just other general gymnastics,
Especially that young.
other athletes from the past come and assist as well
Right,
as volunteers.
aren't there college students or something that possibly that are going into, are going into Phi Ed or something that,
So Trevor, right now we have 2 high school and 1 middle.
Yes, and they've already been coaching since the beginning of November, the high school coaches.
Can I
So-
just ask one more question?
Mhm.
Okay, so can you tell me those numbers? So there's 6 enrolled in the middle school?
Middle, yeah.
Currently
8 in
yes.
the high school.
And 8 in
Yeah,
the high
nice.
school?
Last year, we only had 6 at the high school, so we actually increased our numbers by 2 this year.
How many were in the middle school last year?
12, but again, we still have registration open until January.
And so the middle school officially doesn't start till like January 3rd? And that's the position we're debating right now?
It's after this week.
Okay. Just want to make sure everybody's on board with that.
But then, again, I want to bring up the point that we would be pulling a high school coach to coach middle school, which leaves us with one high school coach.
Are there Title IX issues?
I was gonna ask that as well.
I mean, because we could run into Title IX issues.
Yeah, but doesn't that apply to high school,
Yes,
not to middle school?
I don't know.
Title IX can apply to all, but it's all based on programming, not
Yeah.
on coaches.
And middle
Okay,
school,
yes.
yeah.
Percentages and things.
So
like
this has
We're not
nothing, this
affiliated.
conversation has nothing to do
That
with
would be the
it.
program
I
overall,
also
not-
argue, though, that if we did run into a Title IX issue down the line, with the addition of girls wrestling and some of the other sports, we would be fine
Yeah.
with our Title IX issues. And I know you disagree with that statement, Trevor. We can debate that tomorrow.
And isn't
But
that
I am
why
not as worried about it as
we
you are.
also went co-head wrestling coaches, because we have a female head
Correct.
coach and a male head coach, because we have
Correct.
girls, I was at a meeting, we have girls
Yep.
that wrestle.
Yep.
Some data and
Correct.
information, Shayna?
I sent you the numbers from 2019
Thank you.
and 2020.
Thank you.
So why do we need to pull a high school to go to the middle school?
If we don't approve this one.
Oh, right.
In order to run a middle school program, they would need a coach.
are we for sure running
But
the
they have,
program?
oh, so they have.
We don't have a coach, well, who knows?
I mean, are we for sure
Yes,
running the
making
program?
it sounds like the girls are gonna be in gymnastics no matter what. And I'm saying, I think what I'm gonna say is kinda like Paul, to behoove who's in there now, you would approve it, and we have to get a policy in place, like next month or whatever.
So from 2019 to 2020, we had 4 coaches,
Okay.
so 2 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, we had 3 total, 2 and 1,
And 1 vacant.
right? So this would be, if we didn't add, it would be a retention of last year's status quo,
With less students.
with fewer students by half.
Yeah.
Although we could increase between now and January 3rd, we could go closer to the 12, right now we're at 6.
But we also could be creative to run the practices at the
Oh,
same
I'm not
time.
disagreeing with
Right.
that, yeah. My inclination is to not support
Yes.
adding the additional coach. But I agree with what Paul is describing, and that is that we ought to establish, just like we have ranges for optimal school classroom sizes, right?
Yes.
So that's partly what you're talking about. You know, at what point does the school board become the bad guy or the good guy in maybe canceling a program, in maybe not having a sport or a class? I mean, a couple of years ago, we decided, I mean, and we caught a lot of flack over Chinese, right? Trevor?
So technically, it's not a number, but it's a level, why we would have a coach. And currently, every single varsity program has a head coach and a varsity assistant. If you add a JV, you get another coach. If you have a JV2, you get another coach. If you have a JV, so it's not numbers based, it's based on how many teams you have. So right now, what we're discussing is we have a varsity program, which has a varsity and an assistant like every other program, and then we have a middle school, which would have 1 coach. That's what I'm talking about. So, so gymnastics would be the only sport in the entire school that doesn't have a varsity and an assistant.
I feel like the bigger issue though is we're like one of the last remaining schools with programs, so when you give us the comparables to other districts, you're leaving out all the districts who have gotten rid of the program or co-opted, because it's hard just to be feasible and say, yeah, this is a fair use of space when you have 6 kids in a thing, but you've got, 150 in another sport who can't get into that space because they have to wait, for that 6. I mean, I think perhaps we're pigeonholed into allowing it go for this year, but I think it would behoove us that we have to get a policy that says under X amount, and in my opinion, over X amount, that's what the sport is capped at, because in my opinion, sometimes I think we have also on the other end, too many kids taking, and we have too many, where there does have to be some sort of bottom end and top end. I would like to see a co-op, like I was saying in our committee meeting. I have a daughter who does gym sport. She's a gymnast. But if you go to gym sport or any other club, which is really required in order to really be at that top level, you have to put in the work that gymnasts do. I mean, you're talking 3.5 hours every single day, all year long, summer included. In order to be at that level, you have to put in that much work, which just isn't feasible for almost all families. And it's not feasible for kids to even necessarily come into a program, because you can't just start. You can't just go out like you can for track. It's too high of a level, and if you're at gym sport or another club, you cannot be on a high school or middle school team concurrently. It's not allowed. So knowing that, the program can't grow with gymnasts that we have in Mosinee who do the work, because they can't turn away from their teams that they're with 3.5 hours every day to suddenly go on that. So I think if we have to allow the program because it's already signed up, or I don't know what the board thinks that they should do in terms of the start for the 6 kids next week, but we do need to do something.
And we've all said that.
Yeah, but really do it,
Diane?
I'd like to make a motion that at this time we just don't support this decision to replace the middle school coach, that we can look to be more creative with the practice, the scheduling, volunteer coaches, calling local colleges. There's always people, like I said, willing to volunteer.
And so are you saying then that the middle school girls who are signed up should then join with the high school? And
Sure,
they
do
is
that.
what
We've
you're
done that
proposing?
with multiple sports in the years past, so yes. Like you said, for space alone, setting up the equipment, getting them in there, getting use of space.
So we have a motion by Dan Gorman to not replace the vacancy at the middle school coach position, right?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. Or we can have more, can we have this?
You can. We have a second by Calandra Zebro.
So let's just say the program does grow or doubles in the next couple weeks. Can we revisit this conversation? Yes.
We could.
Yeah. You gotta remember, this is the end of the week now, and if they're starting right after break and there's only 6.
You could, or next.
And they might not even.
And or next month, we start having bringing the policy.
Yep.
About setting up these parameters so that we can have that moving forward for us, the board, to make a decision.
Yes. I said it's gotta be put on
That
that.
said, do you happen to know the high school students, like what grades they are right now?
In other words, they'll stick around or they're graduating?
And speaking, kind of going back to what you said, Megan, I have reached out to other schools around the district or the area. Marshfield has no interest in co-oping. Stevens Point has no interest in co-oping. East has some girls that possibly might come over, and Stratford has at least 3 girls that want to come to gymnastics next year. So if we did co-op and grow the program, that is a possibility.
Are these all high school people?
Yes.
High school, middle school?
High school. High schools, middle school could be Stratford as well.
Okay.
And when do you have to know that by? What's your deadline to get that by?
What is the deadline?
That's for
February 1st?
next year.
I know.
February
I
1st?
know, I'm just
I think it's
making sure
February 1st you have to
he's
present
aware
the
of
co-op.
when to get it by. So.
Could be. I haven't looked up that date for a long time.
I think it's February 1st.
Then that would have to go before our school board by February 1st. So
Yes.
next month, it would have to be approved by the board.
And their school board too.
Correct.
Correct.
And typically, your conference has to sign off on it as well.
Ken?
And if that doesn't occur, then you could say that after this year, the students that are in high school, they go through, so that's what, there's 2 seniors, and what are the other students?
There's a couple freshmen, sophomore, and then junior.
Okay. Then you have the discussion, do you let these students just go through and then say that's it, or do you?
Well,
have
in that
other
third or fourth year, you're gonna have 1 student, maybe
Right,
2.
right. Yeah. And you have to have a minimum of 3, right, for a team, you said?
5.
5, okay.
We
call
do
the
it.
question.
Yeah, okay, we have a call of the question, to not fill the vacancy for the middle school coach for gymnastics. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
I'll oppose.
Pardon me?
I'll oppose.
You're voting nay also?
Mm-hmm. Was actually 3.
Let's raise hand. All in favor, because I wasn't sure of the number.
Understand.
All in favor of supporting the motion to not fill the middle school position, raise your hand. 5, 3. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Motion carries.
Yes, motion carries.
Don't mind me, I have to go to hockey. So.
Good luck. Thanks.
Item,
To that, can we put?
Yep.
Yeah.
like a future agenda item?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Have it written down.
he's already got it written down.
Thank you for bringing that to the full board.
Item 10, discussion and possible decision, approval of the monthly voucher list. Remember the finance committee,
I'll make the motion to approve the monthly voucher list.
All right, I'll second that.
Yeah, okay.
I'm gonna second that.
You have an extension, right?
Roll call, please.
Kelly,
Yes.
Calandra,
Yes.
Stankowski,
Yes.
Maple,
Yes.
Kaiser,
Yes.
Hermany,
Yes.
Mormon,
Yes.
Novinsky.
Yes, with 2 abstentions.
Yep.
Thank you.
Item 11, discussion and possible decision, acceptance of the monthly treasurer's report.
I'll make the motion to approve the monthly.
Motion by Kelly Zebro,
I'll second.
second by Diane Gorman, to accept the treasurer's report. All in favor, I'm sorry, roll call, please.
Kaiser,
Yes.
Maple,
Yes.
Calandra Zebro, Stankowski,
Yes.
Kelly Zebro,
Yes.
Novinsky,
Yes.
Mormon,
Yes.
Hermany.
Yes. Item 12A, new business discussion, public hearing on school date, start date for the 2025-2026 school year.
Yeah, part of the process in order to seek a waiver for an early school start date, or an exemption, I'm sorry, to it, is you have to have a public hearing. So at this time, we would open it up to the process would be to open it up to the public to comment about their thoughts on the early school start date. And if the public does not, and then after the public comment, then we would go to the board having a conversation around the resolution, around the school start date. And then depending upon the board's decision on B, we would go to C then, which would be approve a proposed calendar. So the first step in the process that we have to have, because part of the process is I have to fill out, I would do a waiver then that would be signed by Kevin, which I've done based on our conversations from last month. I have had DPI, the person in charge of this at DPI, look at the resolution and the exemption and all the information, seeking their input on it, and they make sure we have everything right, which we do. So I just wanted to make sure this, we all of a sudden don't approve something and then we find out there's a wrong state statute or something in there,
So item 12A, the public hearing includes the board as well as people in the room?
It would be the people in the room. The board
Thank
would
you.
talk about B, during B, so.
Does anybody in the room wish to speak to item number 12A, which is the public hearing on the school start date for the 2025-2026 school year, which would be August 19?
Correct.
August 19. Yes, we'd
I
love to
would
hear
ask-
from you.
I'm sure you would.
We would, that was sincere, by the way.
No, my only question is, did anybody know this was gonna be a public hearing?
It was on the agenda.
And we discussed it last
I mean-
month at the meeting as well.
Okay, that's all my question was.
Because the agenda came out on Thursday.
Yeah, I know, but,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just going by what Pete said, that he got all of these people that called and talked to him, and I'm sure other board members have also. So I was just wondering if they knew they had an opportunity to come here and
I
speak.
got one.
That was all my question.
That was earlier.
I
I
think,
have
yeah,
no opinion on it one way or the other since.
the only one I got was before the last meeting even.
Yeah.
So I got that too, but I talked to 4 people that
Yeah,
called
you
me.
just explain what's gotta be done.
So,
And I did, I explained to them this is all a
Yes.
construction issue, and at that point, they understood.
And I made a note to Peter that, because I had no idea at all, none, that he felt the way that he did, none. And he knew this was on the agenda, he knew this was coming. Had I known, I would have asked the board to move item number 12C, well, really all 3, even before the earlier presentations. So that I mean, I may have said, let's
He
do
had his
that.
opportunity to be here.
Yeah, I understand. He did now, right? So, okay, hearing no other discussion, or does anybody wish to follow up on the comments that Chris made? Are we comfortable with where we are? Okay. Item 12B, discussion and possible decision, approval of the resolution seeking the exemption for the school start date prior to September 1st, 2025. Could you open the resolution? Go ahead, hang on a second. Because we will need a motion and then a second. I think this is the document that Calandra and I had to sign in case this passes tonight. Question?
My question is more about,
About 12C?
the calendar.
Yeah, so not 12B?
No.
Not the resolution that's on the screen? Okay, is there a motion?
but if your question on the C relates to the early school start date, then it would apply to here.
It's a good question, good point.
It's a teacher question, or I mean, the in-service question.
Oh, okay.
That wouldn't be about this
No,
then?
no.
No. Anybody willing to make a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll make a motion.
Which is a de facto then approval
And I'll
of
second.
the calendar.
First, second.
First Calandra Zebro, second Diane Gorman. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 12C, discussion and possible decision 2025-2026 school calendar, which isn't only student, but it's also in-service discussion related.
Okay.
So, before we have discussion, is anyone interested in making a motion and a second to approve the calendar as presented?
Also move.
Motion by Gorman,
I'll second.
second by Calandra Zebro. A motion and a second doesn't mean automatically that they're gonna support calendar. Donna, you have a question slash
Okay.
concern?
Yes, I didn't quite understand the in-service days from the 4th.
The green?
The green,
Okay.
and the teal and the orange.
Okay, so these are okay, I'm trying to figure out a way to merge how the colors have worked here. So please
Okay.
understand, I'm trying to meld it to how it's been done here in the past. So the 12th, 13th, and 14th are your in-service days for the staff, okay?
Okay.
13th and 14th are also the open house days, which are articulated down
Right.
below. These, yeah, thank you. These are open house days are down right over there. I'm sorry, right there are the open house days. So elementary school,
that I-
middle school, high school,
yeah.
this 13th to 14th. So the staff would work those 3 days. Those are in person. Then these days here are called flex days, but they're not the flex days that have been done here in the past.
Okay.
They're different flex days. So Tom, if you go down to the green, down here, there, they must be a day and a half worked in 4-hour blocks. The purpose of it is philosophically, is if you go back up, Tom, I'm sorry I'm making you move all over the place, is the staff are gonna have a day and a half during this window of time to get their classroom ready. Okay? They can do it whenever they wanna do it, however they wanna do it. I suppose I shouldn't use my middle finger.
They can do a full day and a
They
half
can do a
day
day and
or
a half.
half days.
They can do 2, they can do a bunch of 4-hour days. I don't care,
So if I
okay?
wanted to come in as late as I could, you would have to start, no, the 11th, right?
The 15th.
The 15th you
You
could,
could do
or
the
the
15th
18th.
and the 18th.
Right.
A day and a
No,
half.
no, no, no,
4
no,
hours.
freeze,
No,
freeze,
no.
freeze, freeze, freeze.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just,
They,
staff, everybody has to report the 12th,
Yeah.
right.
13th and 14th. These days here, they have to put in a day and a half. And
So
4-hour blocks.
So 4
Okay.
hours on the 11th, 4 hours.
No,
on the
no,
15th.
no.
8 and
They
4.
could, they could put in 8 hours on the 4th and 4 hours on the 15th. They could put in.
A day, 4-hour blocks. Every day has 2 4-hour
Yeah,
blocks.
they could do a 4-hour block here, a 4-hour block here, and a 4-hour block
Just say
here.
I thought they were saying
Yeah.
limiting.
Every one of those
limiting it
green
to
days
4
has
hours.
2 4-hour blocks.
Okay,
It's the
so
idea
the
you can't come in for
latest-
2 hours here and an hour and a half here and an hour here and there.
I thought you were limiting it.
No.
No, no, no.
No. So the purpose is you have this time period to get your room ready. And then these,
You're next.
that we want the staff to try to understand that don't expect work time in your room during these 3 days.
Gotcha.
That these are gonna be pretty well booked by administration to do PD, you know, welcome back to school, the training, some of the other stuff that you have to do to get the school year done. But these are the days that they can have to get their classroom ready, make sure their technology is up. I mean, I've seen these done, I've been a part of these for almost 15 years now, these block of days, and where they're nice is that staff then, you know, your custodians are available to help them. You know, not everybody's at the copy machine at the same time because not everybody's in the building at the same time. There's flexibility for the staff with when it meets their schedule to come in. You know, your IT department is available then to help with any of those technology things, so it's a lot more evenly spread out with there's not everybody coming at once bombarding all these individuals to say, you know, there's not a list for Steve's crew 3 miles long of I need this move, this move, this move. It's I get a little bit here and it's a lot more manageable. Same with Christie's crew with the IT department. All of those things,
So what
it's
it really
much more
boils down
manageable.
to is 12 hours.
Yes.
You got 12 hours,
Yep.
you can pick your time.
Yep.
They can't be an hour here, hour there.
Right.
It's
Has to be
4-hour
4.
blocks.
Yep.
And you pick it, and yeah, you, like you said, it makes a lot of sense. You
Donna?
get your time spread out.
So that is, the question that I got was the misconception about those days. Some thought that they had to be here.
Right, and understand, Donna, we haven't spent a lot of time,
Right.
the principals have talked about this with their building leads,
Okay.
okay, to get their input, and there hasn't, you know, we don't have an approved calendar to send to them. When we get an approved
Right.
calendar to send, we will explain what that is and be available then. So if you get questions like that, again, I would encourage them to reach out to their building principals, because we've been talking about this calendar on the admin agenda for probably the last 2 months.
Right, and I didn't understand it.
Could you go back to the bottom, Tom? Could you please go back to the bottom? So, because this document has been floating, right? There are some people who, rather than waiting for the information to come and be distributed out after the decision was made by this board, people presumed that they had to work all the green days.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right? So, I mean, because they probably just read must work,
Right.
right?
Because it
They
says
didn't
down
read
here
1.5
too.
days,
I don't know
and
if
it even
I
says
would
it there. What's that?
I wouldn't, and I would not interpret that out of what that says there.
But if you only read must work, and it's green, you might think,
Must work 1.5.
but they only read
days
to that part, I'm guessing,
Right.
right?
The only-
I agree, I wouldn't
the only
interpret it that way
reason
either.
we're doing this is for construction.
Right.
This is the calendar we used to, as a football coach, I'd have loved that calendar.
So I do,
Because I didn't have to come 4 weeks before.
Well, if you,
But my
if-
point is, it's just about the construction.
Right.
Once I told everybody that we're doing this to ease the construction, most people understood.
And Paul, to your point, my first year of teaching in 2000, there was no state statute. 2001, the state statute came in. So for all of us that went to school, minus Dustin, all of us that went to school,
we started.
This was the school calendar. This is what it looked like. You started school somewhere around here and started in service. So it's just after 2001 when the state statute, when the state legislator passed the September 1 start date law, did this become in play.
We're not only doing it for the start, we're also doing it on the back end for remodeling and what we
Yeah.
need to do. That people have to understand that. We may not, he just told you, this may be a 2-year project.
Have we, because we talked about the fact that there will be people, there will be families that already have their vacations
Yep,
planned, and the school district will be accommodative of that. Do we have a target? Is it like we expect 92% of the kids to be here on the 19th?
We don't have a target. I mean, you know, I think one of the things you look at is if you're a high school kid, I would venture to say in my experience in this profession, and most of my experience is at the 6-12 level, you have a large number of your 9-12 kids already tied up on August 1st to August 4th to August 9th, 11th because of athletics.
40%.
You know, you have a large number of your kids already tied up because of sports. Right here, for sure, they're all tied up. And I can tell you, as somebody who had his office in a middle school, high school building, there was always middle school kids that started showing up in the building around the 11th to 18th of August wanting to get their locker opened, and they were churning to start back to the building. All right? And I've talked with a number of elementary. Now, not everybody feels this way, so I don't want to make it sound like this is 100% agreement, but there are a lot of elementary parents that are saying, I'm ready to get my kids back to school about the 19th
Me being one of
of August. All right?
Always.
I understand this is not exactly going to be popular with everybody. I'm not naive to this fact. But what I want to say is, like you said, Paul, this is a designed around construction. This is what a normal calendar looked like from the extension of time until 2000. This is what a school calendar looked like.
And Greg, to reiterate, this is a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
Right.
It's 1 year, this is not
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
every year.
Let's pray we don't have to do it another year for whatever reason.
Well,
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Just so you know, the process now will be, I will send the signed, there'll be a letter corresponding with myself, plus the signed waiver, a copy of the minutes, unofficial minutes. I'll send that off to DPI tomorrow, waiting for their approval, and we'll get the calendar out to people probably in the next couple days, knowing that it's not officially approved yet by DPI.
Is it first or third Friday of September count?
Third Friday.
Is the third Friday of September still the count day?
Yes.
Even though we start early?
Doesn't change. Nope.
When
Nope.
you-
Wonder.
My last injection is when you say we're gonna get the calendar out to people, does that mean families as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you,
Yes.
because many manufacturing, they're picking their vacations now,
Yes.
so if we can get this out as soon as
Yes, no, it'll be
possible.
going out ideally in the next day or two.
With the thing that this is about our construction.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep,
Just understand that.
yep, it's a 1-year thing. You know,
Thank
it's
you.
designed to give us, and I understand that, you know, people can say that 4 to 9 days may not matter in construction, but if you talk to those
It
construction
absolutely
people,
does.
every day you give them
absolutely.
is a day they want. It just gives you a bigger buffer.
Especially on the end of school.
Right, because I've been a part of a building project that has a vast amount of remodeling, and I can tell you right now, they'll give you the school back on, let's just hypothetically say, August, let's say we went with a September 1 start date that following year, all right? They'll give you they'll say, fine, I'll give you the school back August 25th. Well, that doesn't mean you've moved into your classrooms, you've gotten everything put back together. I mean, there's a process
Okay.
that happens from when they turn it over to you when it's actually ready to receive humans.
And one thing I want to throw in there, just because we were talking about the balance of the job that you work with, you know, one thing that doesn't get talked about is temporary heat and sustain a job site when they were operational. So the goal to get started really is to get the footings in and get that building up. You know, we live in Wisconsin. We've been blessed this year having a beautiful fall, but we know we get very cold weather in October and have snow. So I'm just telling you, we're gonna connect all that equipment to my gas meter. So the sooner that building is wrapped, roof on, and sealed, because I can blow 50, 60 grand a month in fuel in a heartbeat. I understand that. That's 31,000 square feet you're trying to maintain.
Of course.
And I can't pour concrete when she's cold. So the point of giving the contractor every bit of option to get ahead, I can't guarantee it, but I mean, I'm a fool to tell you not to do it. And, you know, if we're looking at Fund $10, we're all scratching our head these days trying to save our budget. Why would I want to suck that up?
Right.
You're not going to get away from that bill.
And I will tell you from experience, doing this, even though we say school is gonna end that year on May 22nd, 23rd, I guarantee you the contractors are gonna be saying, any way you can turn part of this building over to me a week or two early?
Right.
Any way I can have this maybe, 4 or 5 days early so I can start, getting stuff organized for the demo and getting everything on site. So they're gonna beg for every day they can
Yeah,
get.
we're still with weather, so, we're playing devil's advocate because think about our timing. Typically, if we had our project ready to roll, we'd be digging in April. We're not digging in April because we don't have the thing bid yet.
And construction on a school is different than construction anywhere else because of our summer schedule is so tight. It's not wide open where people can do stuff in a longer period. We have a very tight window to do that. That's why only a handful of people can really do school-based construction because they have to have the manpower.
Yeah. And part of that, we cannot forget, really the safety factor. Every project I've done here, kids on the bikes are going through all over the place. They love to see the equipment, they love to see all these things. So it's paramount, really, to get your site secured and locked down best we can, because, an unfortunate accident would just be exactly that. So we gotta make sure I give the contractor as much leverage to secure that site and for our students and our staff as well. So that's something that we just can never lose sight of in these projects, because you can't take it back.
Nope.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Item 12D, policy, board policy revision. Second reading, policy 5460, graduation requirements.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Jessica Maple, second by Megan Stankowski to approve item 12D, the second reading. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 12E, discussion and possible decision, annual school safety drill update.
Yeah, every year we have to do a annual school safety drill update to the board with how the drill happened in each building, mainly around like an active shooter type drill. So we have done that here, and then I have to upload that to the DOJ website by January 1st. So that'll be on my docket for tomorrow or the next day, once it gets approved tonight. But we have to present it to the board for perusal and approval.
Need a motion and a second?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Diane Gorman, second by Donna Kaiser to approve the annual school safety drill update. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 12F, discussion and possible decision, WASB delegate assembly resolutions.
This is your baby,
It is
not
my
mine.
baby.
So
Have at it.
this is your ability to talk about the delegate assembly resolutions. Typically, what I've told the board in these situations is you can talk about each resolution individually. You can tell the delegate how to vote. You can give the delegate the ability to vote how they see fit, or you can direct them to vote in general on different things. And you guys may have done it differently here, so I will turn it over to you.
No, that's how we usually run it. If anybody has a problem, they talk to me, otherwise I will go with what my feelings are on resolutions. I've done it for 17 years. So, if anybody has a problem, any questions, let me know.
I would ask you to oppose item 2501.
Blue Ribbon Commission on School Funding.
You still get to vote your conscience, but I'm just telling you what I think you should do.
Okay. What's the rationale?
Because some of the school funding recommendations, there are 20 of them. Yes, it was a bipartisan commission, but some of them just don't work for the rural part of the state.
Okay.
I've heard, yes, I
Okay.
would agree with that.
Okay.
So I'm not an expert,
No, I know.
right?
Well, they'll have arguments too. They'll
Was
be
that
ours.
added by
Yeah.
John Geyer from Nielsen?
He might have been on the I think he was on the committee. Yeah, but that's usually chaired by members.
It was bipartisan.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
it was.
Members of the legislature. I don't know
Yeah.
if that was just an assembly one or if that was both
I
houses
think it was
one.
both houses, but it
I
was
think
a
you're right.
bipartisan, so-called blue ribbon,
Mhm.
sometimes made up of people with nothing else to do, so.
And they had hearings throughout the state.
I know. Well, hearings.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Listening
We
sessions.
do need change on.
So I'm not making that as a motion,
No, I
right?
hear you.
Because it says
Yeah.
and possible decision.
Right.
So does anybody want to have a motion, a second on this topic? Otherwise, it would just, we give Kelly the guidance to do what she does every year as our representative.
There will be a lot of discussion.
Yeah, I know.
You know that, Kevin,
Yep.
on this one. It might be a
So no action on 12, F.
Okay.
Item 12G, discussion and possible decision, 2024-2025 calendar amendment.
Yeah.
So that's this current school year regarding graduation date and the last day of school.
We're asking for them, as we were going through this year's, the calendar you just approved, we were actually talking about this current one. And so Tom, if you just want to go up to the end, one of the things we look at here is currently graduation is set for May 30th. One of the issues with May 30th is that is the day of the sectional track meet, and it's the rain date for a regional final softball and regional baseball. So I do not like putting kids in the possible position to decide between this or a sport, a graduation or a sport. That's not a fair position to put a kid in, considering going to state and track is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but so is graduating high school. And all the other sports. So we are asking to move it up to here to the 23rd, graduation up to the 23rd. Thomas checked, the rec center is open. Jostens hasn't printed the announcements yet, so we've got all that kind of on hold. We've checked all of our due diligence on that. And then we would ask to move the last day of school to the 30th, just the idea that, as Jolene said earlier, summer school starts the 9th, so we get a full week off before summer school starts. Couple that with, we know we shortened the summer a little bit on the back end next summer.
Right.
We give them another 3 or 4 days on the front end, or in some cases probably closer to a full week on the front end. And we would have the staff make up the time on the 2nd and 3rd. Obviously, we have not had a snow day yet, so minutes are fine.
So if you're gonna potentially have a state meet there, aren't you gonna have something else here?
No, because sectionals for
It's the
track are.
calendar switch.
Yeah.
They usually go Monday and Thursday, but because Memorial Day is on the 26th, they went
Tuesday, Friday. Yep, you're exactly right. And then.
It's gonna cause problems. Everybody in the States.
And then baseball's pretty much this week, or softball's this week, and baseball starts here, and the sectionals are into June. So the 23rd, that Friday of Memorial Day weekend, you avoid any
It's gonna be
conflict.
like this until the calendar switches back to Memorial Day, goes back.
So when is the seniors' last day of actual school then? Is their finals the week of the 18th?
If they graduate here, when's their last day?
Traditionally, when we've graduated that Friday before Memorial Day, their last day is that Wednesday, the 21st.
Okay, so that will still be the case, so then that won't interfere with anything. So finals will be 19th, 20, somewhere there?
Yep, for
Okay.
those
Okay.
upperclassmen classes.
And we're okay with minutes.
As of now.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying.
There's a big cushion also.
There's a
You have a
cushion,
cushion?
and there is flexibility within that. I can tell you that as superintendents, that snow issue you had a couple winters ago, you learned some ways to find minutes within your current schedule to not have to add days, I guess is what I'll say.
This is gonna help our building project also.
Yes.
Big time.
So, is there a motion to
I
approve?
make a motion to approve.
Motion by Maple, second by Kelly Zebro. Questions?
Graduation on May 23rd for clarification.
Yes.
And the end of school on the 30th?
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Administrative reports.
I'll try to go fast. Obviously, you heard all about the referendum stuff between Steve and Kevin. Steve Jamrose and Kevin, I don't know really much more to add except for Findorf right now is doing estimating based on the schematic designs. So that should be coming to us soon. So that'll give us a general idea of where we are within the budget. Here, we already alluded to Lab Midwest in there. Steve Jamrose has been doing a good job seeking feedback. And then maybe in the next, either after the meeting today or at our meeting on Thursday, for those that can attend, we can talk a little bit about what diligent looks like and how you get into that. I think we're kind of running on long enough now. I don't know if we need to browbeat that any further, so.
Some really good admin reports this month as well. Thank you, guys. Brian Grill.
I just want to add on mine for you
Please.
guys. Holiday gift giving this year has been a huge success. We've had over 10 donors in the community and have helped 33 families, which is over 50 kids in our district. So I just want to say thank you to our donors. thank you to our counseling staff, Shayna, Carrie, and the business office here, because they have been housing the gifts and having people come up here and helping field some of those phone calls. So thank you to the community. This is a great thing for our families. So.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your work.
You got something, Brett?
Yeah, I just wanted to shout out to Miss Belo and Mrs. Remendini. In the November board report, we had noted in there that we were running a hygiene
Drive.
hygiene drive with United Way. We got the numbers back, and our student lighthouse team and our student senate students packed over 200 and some odd kits for the community. So
Wow.
big shout out to those kiddos, those teachers in United Way.
220.
220?
Wow.
I would just encourage all the board members to at least put eyes on the 10-year construction plan that Steve puts into his report. Remain or continue to be vigilant in the ranking of those, and anything that you want to ask or talk about, either ask Steve or put on a future agenda item. That's a really important, valuable tool that we established about 5 or 6 years ago, so, or maybe longer. Thank you. Other reports? WSB report. Kelly.
That is me. We have the convention, of course, in Milwaukee. In the November school news, they have just kind of a breakdown of some of them. We'll get it once we get there, and then you even have an app on your phone where you can do that. We have two kind of cool, well, there's more than two, but some in the December one, they have a little bit on some of the keynote speakers. They have a little write-up on their books and that. If you're interested in that, I kind of read those articles.
That booklet is magazine's very helpful.
Yes, it is. I
Very helpful.
live by this book, yep, so.
A lot of information.
Yep, so that's all I have as of now.
And so the convention's the 21st. Remember that the board meeting in January is on
It's on Monday.
inauguration day.
Yep.
Yep.
20th.
And if you haven't yet, get the stuff to Shayna regarding your registration. I think we have everybody kind of there already geared up, but I just want to make sure we get all that done as some of the hotel swapping starts happening.
Yeah.
The Hilton overbooked, so there's a lot of schools scrambling right now.
Yeah.
Oops. So does that mean we can make money?
We're in the Hyatt, so we're fine. Yeah, I wish.
Wait, we're in the Hyatt this year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
This is-
Skywalk.
Holy cow. That's the one we've never been in. We've only been Doubletree.
We have a new superintendent. He flexed his muscle there.
So that, Diane, where's that?
Item number
Hyatt,
14B.
Pfizer Forum.
CISA 9 report. Donna.
Skywalk directly related
Not
to
too
the
much,
convention center.
except that, we were applauded for passing our referendum as well as Anago and Marathon. One of our own, Erin Truex, was, called out for a celebration of excellence in her leadership and learning services for CISA 9. And they passed their, their budget also for this next year. So that was all good. So that's really all I have.
Thank you. Future agenda items.
I've got, my evaluation is next month.
Yeah, he'll be getting the scorecard evaluation document from me.
And Jolene is
Next
coming
week.
back to you next month with elementary school, so she's on back-to-back months. And then we've got resolution on the space availability caps related to open enrollment for special ed and any other grades that we want to talk about capping. And then a couple of the other items that you've already brought up today, I have written down on here, so I will be adding those to the agenda as well.
All right, before we go into closed session, I want to thank those staff who are here and those who are watching and listening or read the minutes, that we appreciate all the work you do, and want to wish you a Merry Christmas and a good break next week. So,
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
need a motion to go in closed session.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Kelly Zebro, a second by Dan Gorman, to go into closed session to review section 19.85(1)(c), considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and 19.85(1)(e), deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business, whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Roll call, please.
That was a lot.
We were told we have to read the whole thing.
Yes.
Kaiser,
Yes.
Stankowski.
Yes.
Calandra Zebro.
Yes.
Kelly Zebro.
Yes.
Foreman,
Yes.
Hermaning.
Yes.
Maple.
Yes.
Kevin, I just put you.
10 minutes.
For the elevator stuff.
No, but I gotta tell you, Dustin did an amazing job of reading tonight. I mean, a lot of great commands. I don't know him, but he did such a good job.
You did a good job.
Variable response.
Okay, I was gonna say, because it's time to circulate nomination papers.
That's why
You too, Brad. Everybody can go.
I thought that was kind of more by, I mean, I know there's people that live in the.
No, even, so, I haven't decided if I'm gonna go yet, but if I decide I'm gonna go, I'm gonna call Tammy Baldwin for my tickets. No, I'm serious. Yeah, because Tom Tiffany, his are already accounted for.
Oh, really?
So I would call Tammy Baldwin because I know hers aren't all accounted for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Ron Johnson's are accounted for. I mean, Derek Van Orden said that if I wanted tickets to go, I could call him. He'll say, but you know what? I wanna go, but Ann doesn't. It's like, well, I don't wanna go alone. But it would be a great event, even alone, but it wouldn't be as great.
I know.
And the other thing is, if I went alone, this isn't a bad thing. I would be thinking every minute that Wendy would love this, you know, which we know.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my, yeah.
Yeah. Is our camera off, Tom?